The story begins with an evil kingpin sitting down for a meeting with his associates, reminding them that they have been in the temp business for over 15 years. You can already tell that this is a man who has very little regard for other human beings, as he has men serving as chairs for his associates to sit on, and he even uses one of their hands as an ashtray. Today marks a significant occasion for their shady operation, so they decide to celebrate. A glass of wine is poured by a guy with glasses and then passed over to a tester to take a sip first and confirm there is no poison before the kingpin drinks it. The tester takes a sip and gives the all clear, saying the drink is clean. With that, the kingpin pours himself a glass and takes a sip. But almost immediately after that single sip, he begins to collapse, making it clear that the drink was in fact poisoned. The others immediately grab the tester, assuming he is the one behind it, but it was actually the work of the guy who poured the drink in the first place, Gero. With that handled, Gero changes back into his regular clothes and heads home. But on the way he spots a beautiful blonde girl kissing a man inside his car. Gero gets so caught up watching them that he walks straight into a wall. Later that night, after Gero gets home, where he settles in with some ice cream, while his younger sister Akari asks him how he managed to slip the poison past the poison tester. Gero explains that all he did was slowly build up an immunity in the tester over time. He spent 3 months quietly adding small doses of poison to the tester's food until his body was able to withstand a lethal amount. Akari hears this and says that must have been an enormous amount of effort, and Gero admits it definitely was. Nobody would ever expect someone to go to such ridiculous lengths, and that is exactly why they are able to stay in the hitman business. That aside, Akari asks Gero whether he has given any thought to getting married, and Gero nearly chokes on his ice cream at the question. Gero is honestly convinced he has very little hope of ever getting married, especially since he barely comes into contact with women in this line of work. He recalls that their grandmother wants one of them to take over as the new head of the poison clan, and when he told her he could not because he was single, she went ahead and matched him up with a complete stranger from a branch family and nearly pushed him into getting married on the spot. Gero knows this means that if he stays single, the line of poison masters will end with him. Akari acknowledges that, adding that it is not as if she can really picture girls chasing after him anyway. Gero then pulls out his phone and sees a message from the Bugmaster, so he heads out to grab a bite with him. They make small talk for a while and Gero brings up how he plans on spending the rest of his life as a single man. But that is when the Bugmaster mentions that he is actually thinking about getting married soon to a quiet and sweet girl he met not too long ago. Gero genuinely finds this surprising because he always assumed the Bugmaster would end up growing old alone. That aside, the Bugmaster makes a point of reminding Gero that just because he is getting married does not change the fact that they are still good friends. With that said, the Bugmaster activates his bug legs and begins to leave, but Gero calls him back at the last second and tells him that he has always looked at marriage as something negative. But after hearing him talk about it tonight, he is starting to think it might not be so bad after all. The next day, Gero heads to a new job, and on the way there, the man who hired him starts talking about the girls who work at his office, but Gero just brushes it off and tells him to keep his eyes on what they came there to do. That aside, his man goes on to introduce Gero to the next criminal on the list that needs to be taken out, a woman named May, a cold-hearted marriage swindler who has been causing a great deal of trouble. He asks Gero to handle her. Gero wastes no time and injects her with a serum, telling her she is about to experience severe nerve paralysis that will work its way up toward the brain. He tells her that within seconds she is going to be in agony, feeling as though she is being torn apart from the inside. But rather than being frightened by this, May just starts flirting with Gero. Gero does not take the bait and figures it is nothing more than a last-ditch attempt to save herself. May admits that she did con people, but explains that she mainly did it to pay for treatment for her younger brother who is very sick. She says she grabbed every opportunity she could find and took on jobs she could never tell a single person about. But even that was never enough. She coughs up some blood as the poison begins to take hold, and adds that if she is going to die with someone who looks just like the man she loves watching over her, then she supposes that is good enough for her. She looks Gero straight in the eyes and asks him to at least tell her his name before it is over. Gero feels a slight warmth rise to his face as he quietly tells her. Meanwhile, the man watches Gero work through a screen, and the girls around start to wonder why it is taking him so long, questioning whether he is actually as good as people say. But the man just tells them to relax because he comes from the Gero family, one of the oldest and most respected names in the assassination business, so he has no doubt he will get the job done. Back with Gero, he finds himself genuinely wondering whether May actually has real feelings for him, but that is when Akari suddenly calls and tells him that she is moving back to the main house because she has decided to help produce the next heir to the Gero family and the new poison master. One of the branch family members is also looking for a partner, so she has decided to simply marry him. Gero cuts her off and tells her she does not have to go that far, but Akari reminds him that their grandmother is completely serious about getting an heir, and even said that if Akari refuses, she will strip away her freedom and force the matter. So Akari would rather do things her own way and on her own terms. Gero asks what will happen to her girlfriend, and Akari simply says she is going to have to end things with her. Gero tells her to hold on and not do anything just yet. He walks back over to May and asks her to marry him. He explains that in order to become the head of the poison clan, he needs to be married, and since she at least has feelings for him, he wants it to be her. He also mentions that he would be able to help with her brother's illness on top of that. May looks up at him with a bright expression that briefly makes Gero smile, but then her face goes completely cold as she tells him there is absolutely no way she would ever agree to that. She explains that she knew she was going to die anyway, so she just wanted to take one last shot at something for the fun of it, and now she can go in peace. She then tells him that other people fall in love and get married because they are genuinely right for each other, but in his case, he is never going to be a good match for someone he could end at any moment without a second thought. She tells him that if he ever wants to be a good match for someone, he has to start by being honest about how he really feels, because a marriage built only for inheritance will never last. Gero hears this and finally opens up. He tells her that even though he is meant to be a cold-blooded assassin, he still wants a quiet life with someone he loves. He wants someone who will love him for who he is and truly care about his feelings. But he believes that will never happen because he never went to a normal school and never had the chance to meet any girls. He has lived his whole life as a poison master, and he was trained to never open his heart to anyone. May starts to laugh when she hears this because he just shared his feelings with her even though they only just met. She tells him it is not as hard as he thinks. All he needs to do is meet different kinds of people, and sooner or later he will find the right one. Then she tells him to just finish the job. As she says this, she begins to cry, realizing that her little brother's medical bills will never be paid now. Suddenly, the handler arrives with his group and tells Gero to stop wasting time and kill May already. But Gero refuses. He says he is not going to kill her because he needs her. He believes that May must be skilled at bringing people together if she was chosen to marry into their group, so he wants to hire her for that. He promises that he will do everything he can to keep her and her little brother alive, and in return, he wants her to help him find someone to marry. May is surprised and a bit excited when she hears this, because no one has ever said something like that to her before, but a bullet suddenly flies past her face. The handler says he is disappointed in Gero, and now he has no choice but to kill him. He adds that killing the heir of the poison master will push them to the top of their field. Gero says that the handler and his group ruin people's lives by stealing jobs from ordinary people and then blackmailing them with what they find. Gero explains that he only kills bad people without guilt, so that means they all qualify. Gero then injects himself with one of his serums, and it affects his body right away. His eyes turn green, and he puts on a gas mask. The handler and his group start shooting at him without holding back, but when the bullets stop, both Gero and May are gone. The handler looks up and sees them on the ceiling, but by then it is already too late. In the next moment, all of his men are on the ground, weak and unable to stand, because Gero has poisoned them. May is shocked to see how skilled Gero really is, because she thought he was just talking before. Gero tells her that he only used his 300 torments of hell poison, so they will not die, but the pain and fear should be enough to keep them from doing this kind of work again. After that, Gero calls Akari and tells her not to break up with her girlfriend, because he is going to get married and take over as the new head of the poison clan. Akari is happy to hear this. At that moment, the handler tries to escape. However, he runs straight into a one-way mirror and gets stuck. Gero then throws a poison needle into his back, giving him the same effect as the others and stopping him from getting away. After that, they leave the building and get ready to enter a taxi. body. May still cannot move because she is in the chair, so she asks Gero to carry her. Gero starts to panic right away because he has never touched a girl outside of work. May tells him to relax, then reveals that she is actually a guy. This shocks Gero and leaves him speechless. They go to a hotel where Gero confirms that May is really a guy. He asks why May wears women's clothes. May explains that he dresses as a woman when he tricks men, and dresses as a man when he tricks women. He says it is more fun to play both sides. May then promises Gero that by the time he is done helping him, he will be able to attract both men and women. May tells Gero that he has already signed him up for a matchmaking event and asks him to fill in his details. The next day, they attend the event and notice that there are far more men than women. To fix this, May dresses as a woman and draws attention from many of the men, which reduces the number of rivals Gero has to deal with. Gero learns that first impressions matter a lot, so May decides they need to find his natural charm and bring it out. When Gero talks to his first girl, he immediately tells her that he makes millions of dollars every year. This causes her to lose interest and reject him. When he tells May what happened, May is not surprised. He explains that leading with money only makes him look arrogant. May tells Gero to smile more next time. When Gero tries this with another group of girls, his smile looks forced and uncomfortable, and they all reject him. By the end of the day, Gero becomes frustrated because everything went worse than he expected. May then shows Gero a dating app that he signed him up for and tells him he already has a date. Later, during the date, Gero struggles to eat because he was trained as a poison master to never eat food he did not prepare himself. By the time he finally gathers the courage to take a bite, his date has already left. After all this, they decide to stop for the day and try again tomorrow. As May turns to go home, a jeep suddenly drives past, and someone pulls him inside before speeding away. Gero sees this and runs after the car, but he cannot catch up. Inside the car, the man asks May what he did to his older brother, the handler from earlier, and why he suddenly left the family cleaning services. May says he knows nothing about it, but the man does not believe him. He shoots a lead pellet at May from his mouth, which hits his face and causes pain. May still denies any knowledge. The man prepares to fire again. At that moment, the driver sees Gero standing in the middle of the road. They decide not to stop and try to run him over. Just before the car hits him, Gero jumps over it and strikes it with a special thermo poison. The attack is strong enough to split the moving car into two parts. Gero chases the broken car and catches up. As May's side of the car begins to fall off a bridge, Gero reaches him just in time and pulls him to safety, while the others fall into the water below. As Gero holds May, he returns the phone May dropped earlier and thanks him for the day. He says that because of May, he was able to meet many girls in one day. He admits that he is not good at this, but he still wants May's help. May realizes that Gero did not even get a single contact from the event, so he asks for Gero's number. May becomes Gero's first real friend, even though he doubts he will make many more. As they walk back together, May looks at Gero and feels drawn to him. In that moment, he understands that this is Gero's true charm. The next day, May shows Gero a flyer and tells him to meet her the following afternoon at the Avocado Oceanic Art Gallery. Gero has absolutely no idea how an art gallery on a cruise ship has anything to do with helping him find his charm, but May just tells him to trust the process and go along with it. Then the next day, May meets up with Gero at the entrance to the cruise ship and Gero is genuinely stunned by how beautiful she looks. Shortly after, the two of them step inside the art gallery and Gero is immediately caught off guard by just how breathtaking the scenery inside is, though he still cannot figure out why May brought him here of all places. May then explains that today is going to serve as his rehearsal for what a first date should actually look and feel like, with her playing the role of his date. She points out that even if Gero were to somehow manage to get a girl's number and set up a real date, the way he carries himself right now would make the whole thing go terribly, so she thinks it is far better to go in having practiced and prepared properly. Their mock date gets underway and May starts deducting points from Gero every time he comes across as either too stiff or too awkward in the way he acts. But then, after a little while of walking around, Gero stops in his tracks when he spots a 40-year-old DIY candy kit on display, valued at over 30 million yen. Something about it gets Gero talking naturally and with genuine personality, and he ends up having a surprisingly charming conversation with May all about the candy kit without even trying. May is impressed enough to award him 30 bonus points on the spot caught, and for the first time she feels a real sense of hope for what he might be capable of. A little while later, Mei draws Gero's attention to a strange-looking man sitting on the floor nearby, fidgeting away to himself, and she asks Gero what he makes of him. Gero's first instinct is that the man must either be homeless or dealing with some kind of mental health issue. But then a group of tourists suddenly spot the man and immediately flock around him in excitement. Mei explains that the man is none other than Mr. Shiratori, one of the most celebrated and well-known young painters in the entire country. She uses him as a living example to show Gero that people are generally drawn to others because of their unique talents and gifts. Mr. Shiratori might look and behave in a way that seems completely odd to a stranger, but his fans would not have him any other way because he has already won them over entirely through his extraordinary ability. Gero takes that on board, but tells her he does not think he has anything like that going for him. Mei tells him that he is wrong about that. She brings up what happened back with the handler, where he cleared out an entire room full of dangerous men and got her out of there all on his own. She tells him she has absolutely no doubt that something like that is a genuine part of his charm. With that said, she tells him to forget about dating apps and matchmaking parties because she believes the best way for him to find a partner is by helping people. She suggests things like rescuing hostages, protecting important people, and letting girls notice him while he does good work. Gero is surprised by this idea because he is a poison master and his usual job is to assassinate people. However, Mei explains that there is no rule that says he cannot also help others. Hearing this makes Gero start to think about it seriously. Later that night, the guards notice that a valuable piece of artwork is missing. They quickly assume that Haimkawa is responsible. The guards inform the ship's pilot, and he starts checking for any nearby boats that might have left the cruise ship. When he finds nothing, they conclude that Haimkawa must still be somewhere on board. What they do not realize is that Haimkawa is already far below sea level, moving toward land with her shark, Chomsky. She arrives near the shore and sees her teammates waving at her, so she believes she has escaped safely. Suddenly, a whirlpool forms and pulls her teammates in, catching her by surprise, and then a person in a white suit jumps down toward her. At the same time, Gero and Mei are at a buffet. Gero is now seriously thinking about the idea of saving people, so he asks Mei where he can find jobs like that. Mei shows him a website called Dark Nav, where different kinds of jobs are listed, including capturing criminals and stopping smugglers. She is surprised that Gero has never heard of it before, and Gero explains that he usually gets his work through brokers. Gero spends some time looking through the website until he finds a rescue mission involving Haimkawa. The report says that she has been captured by bandits who are demanding the return of artworks that law enforcement has taken in exchange for her release. Haimkawa is known by many as a famous thief, but the truth is different. Wealthy and cruel collectors often steal art from people who cannot defend themselves, and Haimkawa secretly returns those stolen pieces to their rightful owners. Because of this, she has loyal supporters. A fan club dedicated to her is the one that hired Gero to rescue her. Mei is not at all surprised that Gero is the only one who showed up for the job, since there would not be many people willing to take on something this high risk for such little pay, though she figures this might actually work in their favor, because with barely any competition around, it gives Gero the perfect opportunity to step up and be her knight in shining armor. Gero introduces himself as one of the poison masters, and the men who hired him are visibly stunned to find themselves in the presence of an actual poison master. Meanwhile, the kidnapper leans over to Haimkawa and taunts her, telling her he has never come across anyone as beautiful as her before and asking her to switch sides and join him. But Haimkawa refuses flat out, telling him that she only steals for causes she genuinely believes in and that her mission is to return every piece of artwork he has stolen back to the people it rightfully belongs to. One of the paintings he took belonged to a little girl whose mother had passed away, and Haimkawa once made that little girl a personal promise that she was going to steal it back for her no matter what. The kidnapper gets irritated hearing all of this and calls Ushio over, who grabs her by the throat and dumps water over her without a second thought. Meanwhile, Gero and Mei get the rescue mission underway and work their way through a mall. That is when they come around a corner and run straight into two guards armed with guns. But Gero steps right in front of her and drops both guards with a single split kick before they can do anything. Mei starts to think she should just hang back and sit the rest of the mission out, but Gero reaches down and helps her back up, telling her plainly that he needs her with him. which is enough to give her the boost of confidence she needs to keep going. Meanwhile, Ushio continues to pour his ferrofluid over Himekawa, but the boss tells him to cut it out and go deal with the intruders who have just broken in, so Ushio heads off to take care of them. Back with Gero and Mei as they continue pushing forward through the ship. Gero starts quietly rehearsing the lines he plans to use on Himekawa when he finally gets to her. That is when they walk straight into another group of guards blocking their path, but Gero handles all of them with ease using his martial arts, casually taking each one down while continuing to practice his pickup lines out loud with Mei in between strikes. They both then enter an elevator together and go down to the lower area. At the same time, the boss aims a gun at Himekawa. At first, she thinks he is going to kill her in a weak way, but then he changes and points the gun at the painting instead. He tells her to obey everything he says, or he will destroy the painting. Himekawa immediately realizes it is the same painting she promised to return to a small girl. She cannot allow it to be damaged, so she agrees to follow his orders without resistance. Then suddenly, the boss's arms are blown off by an unknown force, and he becomes extremely scared and starts panicking. After that, a strange being appears from the wall, moves into his body, and burns him alive from inside. However, this is not actually happening in reality. It is only a hallucination created because of the poison that Gero had previously given him. Gero then walks forward calmly and introduces himself to Himekawa. He tells her that he is the master who has come to rescue her. Himekawa is shocked that a master personally came to save her. She also quickly tells Gero that she does not have enough money to pay him for this job, which catches him completely off guard because he did not plan what to say next after his introduction. Right after that, Mei enters the room and starts trying to remove the chains that are holding Himekawa, but suddenly, Ushio appears from behind and grabs Himekawa tightly, stopping her movement. In response to this, Gero immediately injects himself with an augmentation serum that increases his physical abilities many times over his normal limit. He then rushes straight toward Ushio, but she suddenly disappears from sight and reappears somewhere else, leaving Himekawa behind in the middle of the confusion. Because of this, Gero quickly throws Himekawa over toward Mei so she can keep her safe and out of danger. Ushio then attacks using water fists. The force of her attack is so strong that it breaks the floor beneath them and causes them both to fall and continue fighting on a lower level of the building. After that, Ushio quickly dashes toward Gero again, but instead of continuing to attack immediately, she suddenly apologizes to him for not introducing herself properly earlier. She then offers him her business card. She already knows that Gero is a poison master, and she asks him if he wants to settle the situation privately instead of fighting. Ushio explains that she is also a water master. She believes that if two masters fight seriously, the damage will be too large and will go far beyond what Gero is being paid for this job. Because of that, she offers him 10 times the amount his client originally promised if he agrees to leave Himekawa and walk away from the mission completely. Meanwhile, Mei is watching everything happening, and she is completely confused about the situation. At that moment, Gero's augmentation syringe rolls across the ground toward her. She notices that there is still some liquid left inside it and reaches out to take it, but Gero suddenly yells at her not to touch it. Ushio sees this reaction and immediately understands that the substance is not a normal serum, but actually a very dangerous poison. Ushio then explains that masters inherit modified bloodlines that are connected to their special abilities. In the case of poison masters, their bloodline strengthens their body when exposed to a lethal dose of poison. However, Gero explains that this is not the full truth. He adds that it is actually also a curse that forces poison masters to finish their target before their own body shuts down completely. Since Ushio is also a master, Gero assumes she must also have a modified bloodline as well, even though her water control ability looks almost like magic to him. However, Ushio does not respond to this assumption. Instead, she asks Gero once again whether he is willing to reach an agreement and settle things peacefully. When Gero refuses again, Ushio immediately begins attacking him. At first, the fight is going in her favor, and she is clearly overpowering him, but Gero quickly changes the situation by coating her glove with therma poison, which causes it to explode suddenly. That small opening gives Gero the chance he needs, and he follows up quickly with another attack that knocks Ushio to the ground. As Ushio slowly gets back up, she is shocked and confused about how Gero managed to hit her 3 times in a row at exactly the same point with millimeter level precision. Gero then speaks and says says that he is doing all of this for Himekawa. Even though they are strangers right now, he believes she might become very important to him in the future. Because of that, he is willing to risk his life completely on that possibility, even if it ends up killing him. Ushio hears what Gero says, and it makes her think that he has gone soft. Because of that, she immediately unleashes her Hell's Lashes modified bloodline and attacks him using high-pressure streams of water. The attacks come rapidly and with great force, but Gero manages to dodge all of them. However, during the exchange, Mei gets hit by one of the attacks, which causes Gero to become worried about her condition. As the fight continues, Himekawa asks Mei if she is okay and questions why she is going this far. Mei responds by saying that this is simply their job, and their main priority right now is to get her to safety. She tells Himekawa to stop worrying about them and just run away while she still can. However, Himekawa refuses to leave. She is not the type of person who runs away when things become dangerous. Instead, she asks Mei how she can help, and as they think about it, both of them notice the poison syringe lying nearby. Meanwhile, Gero is starting to get overwhelmed by Ushio. He has already used up all his needles and poisons, and without them, he cannot properly fight back. At the same time, Ushio's constant attacks make it difficult for him to get close enough to face her directly. In the middle of the battle, Gero's thoughts drift back to his childhood. He remembers being trained by the head of the Poison Clan. During that time, he was warned that no one must ever learn about the Poison Clan's modified bloodline. If anyone were to discover it for any reason, he must eliminate them without hesitation. Gero snaps out of the memory and refocuses on the fight. Just then, Himekawa suddenly drops down on top of him and presents the poison syringe to him. Gero reminds her that he is there to rescue her and tells her again to run away. However, Himekawa refuses and says she is not someone who wants to be saved like a helpless princess. Because of that, she is willing to fight and help him instead. Suddenly, Ushio uses her Hydra tentacles to grab Himekawa and pull her away. She mocks Himekawa for being foolish enough to come down and involve herself in the fight. At that moment, Gero stands up and firmly holds the syringe in his hand. Ushio immediately recognizes what it is and tells him to drop it right away. Gero lets the syringe fall to the ground. As soon as he does that, he rushes toward Ushio at incredible speed. While he sprints, she looks at the syringe and realizes it is empty. This makes her understand that Gero has already taken the poison dose. By the time she realizes this, it is already too late. Gero moves in and strikes her with a poisoned needle directly to the neck. The attack takes effect instantly, and Ushio collapses on the spot. After that, Gero catches Himekawa and holds her in his arms. However, as he does this, he suddenly realizes that his hands are in the no-touch zone. This causes him to panic, and he quickly looks up at Mei, asking for help. Shortly after, Ushio wakes up and sees Gero looking over her. Gero calmly explains her water technique and mentions that he has read about it many times in the Poison Clan's library. Ushio feels confused because she cannot understand why he chose not to kill her when he clearly had the chance to do so. Gero then explains that he came here to retrieve Himekawa, not to kill her. Now that he has defeated her, he believes that is enough to teach her a lesson, so she will not interfere with him again. As for the other kidnapper, Gero also decides not to kill him. Instead, he lets him go with a warning. This decision annoys Ushio, and she calls Gero soft for sparing them. Gero responds by saying that if anyone crosses him again, they will face his Thousand Torments toxin, making it clear that he is still dangerous if pushed too far. Mei then asks Himekawa if she is okay with how things turned out. Himekawa replies that it is fine with her because she does not plan on getting captured again in the first place. After that, she offers to give Gero and Mei a ride. They are both shocked and almost panic when they realize they will be riding on Himekawa's pet shark, Chomsky, as they head back. Sometime later, Himekawa visits Aegea and returns the painting of her mother. Aegea and her father are both happy and relieved to have it back. At the same time, the Himekawa fan club watches this moment through a camera and becomes emotional, finding the scene very touching. Meanwhile, Gero stands awkwardly in a corner, unsure of what to do. Himekawa calls him over because Aegea wants to thank him personally. Gero shuffles forward, and as Aegea thanks him, he begins to feel emotional. Himekawa also thanks Gero for saving her. She admits that when she first heard he was a poison master, she assumed he would be cold and heartless. However, she now sees that he is different, which causes Gero to blush slightly. Mei then speaks up and tells Gero that she never had the chance to properly thank him for paying for her brother's treatment. She shows him pictures pictures that her brother sent, showing his recovery progress. She expresses how grateful she is for what Gero has done. May points out that Gero has positively impacted many people's lives, even if he does not realize it. She tells him that he should accept the praise he is receiving. Hearing all of this makes Gero very emotional, and he quietly walks off toward the bathroom to let it all out. However, before he can stay there, the Himekawa fan club calls him back to discuss his payment for the job. At that moment, Himekawa speaks up and explains that they do not have enough money to pay him for his services. Instead, she says she is willing to offer anything else as compensation. Hearing this makes Gero visibly flustered. May then speaks up and suggests that the three of them should go out and celebrate. Later that evening, Gero and Himekawa sit together awkwardly, waiting for May to arrive. However, May intentionally decides not to show up because she wants to leave Gero alone with Himekawa and see if any kind of connection or spark can develop between them. She sends Gero a message, telling him that she will not be able to make it after all and that he will have to handle things on his own. When Gero reads the message, he nearly panics as he realizes that it will just be him and Himekawa for the entire night. Himekawa then takes Gero to a shark convention. It is very clear that this kind of event is not Gero's style, but Himekawa is clearly enjoying herself and having a great time. After that, they sit down for dinner. Meanwhile, May is secretly watching them from a distance. However, she quickly realizes that Gero has already figured out that she set up this entire thing. May remembers that she had previously told Gero to always compliment a girl on what she is wearing, but instead of doing that, Gero awkwardly comments that Himekawa's necklace looks like an old keepsake. This leaves both May and Himekawa completely speechless. Gero then tries several different ways to start a conversation with Himekawa, but every attempt fails and becomes more awkward than the last. May watches everything unfold and realizes that the situation is turning into a complete mess. She decides that she has no choice but to step in and help. She connects her phone to a nearby monitor and sends signals to Gero, guiding him on what to say. She encourages him to start small talk by asking Himekawa about her childhood. The restaurant manager notices what May is doing and tells her to stop, but she quickly rizzes him into staying quiet and letting her continue. Back at the table, Himekawa notices that Gero has barely touched his food and asks him about it. Gero explains that because he was trained from a young age to become a poison master, he cannot safely eat food that he didn't prepare himself. He says that since he was a child, he has always cooked his own meals and eaten alone. Himekawa says she understands that feeling to some extent. She explains that she was also alone for most of her childhood. She didn't have a family and had no friends at the orphanage where she grew up. One day, a wealthy man who was close to death decided to adopt her. However, it was not because he cared about her personally, but because he realized he had no one to inherit his wealth and legacy and became afraid. Because of that, she ended up inheriting the Himekawa name and a large fortune. She explains that she could have lived her entire life without ever needing to work. However, one day she discovered a large collection of beautiful art pieces hidden away inside his mansion. When she investigated further, she found out that those artworks had been obtained illegally. She ends up returning all the artwork to their rightful owners, and doing that takes a large amount of money from Himekawa's fortune, leaving her broke. Because of that, she now has to work a part-time job 5 days a week just to survive. After hearing this, Gero thinks back to how good it felt when people thanked him earlier. He realizes that Himekawa has been doing things like that her entire life. Because of that, he tells her that she is really cool for what she has done. Hearing this, Himekawa begins to tear up slightly as she looks at him, because it is the first time anyone has ever complimented her in that way. The atmosphere between them becomes more serious, and May signals to Gero, encouraging him to go ahead and ask Himekawa to be his girlfriend. Gero gathers his courage, but instead of asking her out, he asks her to be his friend. This surprises both Himekawa and May. Himekawa laughs a little and says she really thought he was about to ask her out. Gero admits that he did want to, but explains that they don't really know each other yet. He says that even though he may have made a good impression earlier, there are dark parts of himself that he is not proud of and does not want to hide forever. He looks at Himekawa seriously and tells her that he wants her to get to know who he really is. He says that if she can accept him fully after that, then he will properly ask her out. He believes that this is the first step toward the kind of marriage and future he wants. May watches all of this happen and is left completely speechless by how things turned out. Himekawa understands what Gero means explains she agrees that starting as friends is fine with her. However, she also tells him that winning her heart will not be easy. After that, they exchange numbers and Gero walks her over to her car. Before Himekawa gets into the car, she mentions that since he cannot eat food made by others, she hopes that next time he will cook lunch for them. As he is standing there, Mei suddenly appears behind him and tells him that he has been assigned a new job as a bodyguard for the only daughter of a powerful CEO. Gero reacts immediately and jumps back, thinking that taking this job would feel like he is cheating on Himekawa. Mei corrects him and explains that it is not cheating because he and Himekawa are only friends at the moment. She also adds that meeting more people, especially different kinds of girls, will help him gain more experience and better understand relationships. Gero sees the logic in that, so he ends up agreeing. A while later, Gero begins his job as a bodyguard and takes on a new assignment. His job is to protect the CEO's daughter, Shori, while also accompanying her to a college party. Even though he fully understands that his responsibility is to keep an eye on Shori at all times and make sure nothing happens to her, he starts to feel a little nervous because this is the very first time he has ever gone to a college party. It turns out that Shori is just as socially awkward as Gero is. She struggles to approach people, make conversation, and fit in with the others around her. Because of that, many of the students at the party begin to think she is a weirdo, which only makes things more uncomfortable for her. The scene then shifts back to the time when Gero was first introduced to Shori by her uncle, Mitsuhiko. Mitsuhiko explains that he wants to hire Gero as a bodyguard for Shori, who is set to begin university this spring. However, he believes it would be much better if Gero handled the job quietly and without standing out too much, so no one would suspect that Shori was being protected. Mitsuhiko then goes on to explain the family situation in more detail. He says that Shiori's father built his massive company from the ground up within a single generation, creating a powerful business empire through his own hard work. Unfortunately, he passed away last year after suffering from illness. Before his death, however, he left behind a will stating that once Shori became old enough, she would inherit the company and become the next CEO. But that decision has created conflict within the family. Mitsuhiko explains that his older sister, Fudy, believes the company should belong to her instead. She rejects the will and is doing everything she can to make sure that she becomes the one who inherits control of the company. Mitsuhiko admits that he does not know exactly what Fudy is planning, but he has heard disturbing rumors. According to what he has learned, she may have hired someone who uses strange and unusual techniques in order to assassinate Shori. Because of that possibility, Mitsuhiko says he does not want to take even the smallest risk with Shiori's safety. That is why he specifically chose to hire the top member of the Poison Clan, believing Gero is the best person possible for the job. Not long after that, Mei arrives and gives Gero a fake student identification card. She tells him that from this point onward, his cover identity will be Oshima, a regular third-year university student. Gero accepts this new role without much complaint and seems perfectly fine with it. Just then, Shiori timidly speaks up and says that one thing she has always wanted to experience during university life is attending a drinking party like other students do. Gero immediately rejects the idea and tells her that it sounds far too dangerous. However, Shiori responds by giving him an innocent puppy dog eyes. The moment Gero sees that expression, all of his resistance disappears and he instantly agrees to let her go. At the drinking party, it is time for everyone to introduce themselves one by one. When it becomes Shiori's turn, she nervously stands up and introduces herself in a stiff and uncomfortable way. Instead of helping her fit in, it only makes everyone there think she is even stranger than they already did. Next, it is Gero's turn. He decides that this is his chance to prove that even a poison master can become the life of the party. Wanting to leave a strong impression, he confidently introduces himself and then immediately tries to amaze everyone by chugging 8 glasses of beer at the same time. Mei watches the whole thing from a distance and can already tell that this is going to end badly. After Gero finishes drinking all 8 glasses, he clenches the liquid in his stomach and then pulls it back out through his mouth in the shape of a snake by using a water-absorbent polymer trick. He believes this performance will at least earn him some applause or admiration. Instead, everyone who witnesses it is completely disgusted and unsettled by what they just saw. Trying to move past that awkward moment, one of the students notices that one last person still has not introduced himself yet. A blonde guy sitting quietly in the corner then slowly stands stands up. He calmly introduces himself as Naruko and says nothing more. The student asks him what year he is in and what major he studies, but Naruko simply replies that none of that matters. He says the only thing that matters is that he was able to meet all of them in this moment. After saying that, he casually sits back down. The girls at the party immediately find him attractive and rush toward him, asking for his phone number and trying to get his attention. Watching this happen makes Gero realize that there are levels to this. After the party ends, they all head back home. Gero reflects on how badly the night went for both of them, so he asks Shiori why she forced herself to attend in the first place. He says he understands that she is set to inherit a company and assumes she wanted to improve her communication skills, but he is still curious about her real reason. Shiori explains that wanting to go to the party was not actually about the company at all. She says that right before her father passed away, he told her to stop being so timid and to live life to the fullest because life is much more enjoyable that way. She then tells Gero and Mei that she knows all she has to do is take the first step and people will eventually like her. Even so, she cannot stop herself from worrying and hesitating. Shiori also admits that she never got the chance to ask her father why he chose her to inherit the company. Because of that, she wants to become stronger, improve herself, and reach the point where she can laugh away her fear instead of being controlled by it. But Gero quickly gives her a reality check and reminds her that there is still someone out there trying to kill her. Even after saying that, he also tells her that she is free to do whatever she wants, because no matter what happens or how dangerous things become, he is going to protect her. Hearing those words from him immediately makes Shiori blush. From a distance, Naruko is secretly watching the two of them while giving a report to Fudy. This reveals that he is the assassin Fudy hired in order to eliminate Shiori. The next day, Naruko is calmly enjoying a massage when Fudy suddenly comes over and begins scolding him for taking too long to finish disposing of Shiori. She is clearly frustrated that the task is still incomplete and keeps complaining to him. Naruko becomes irritated by her constant nagging, so he uses his special ability to interrupt her thought process. Once her mind settles down and she becomes calm again, he casually tells her that he is going to handle everything himself. Later that afternoon during class, Mei does not understand why Gero is even bothering to pay attention to the lesson, since he is not actually a real student. Gero simply tells her that he is finding the experience enjoyable because everything about this school life is still completely new to him. Outside the classroom, Naruko is seen meditating with intense focus. After a while, he activates his sound technique, which creates a series of high-frequency resonations. The waves spread through the area and cause the entire classroom to experience extreme gravity, forcing everyone's heads down onto their desks under the pressure. At the same time, part of the classroom ceiling suddenly breaks apart and begins falling directly toward Shiori. Without wasting a second, Gero injects himself with his enhancement poison, which greatly boosts his physical abilities. With his body strengthened, he rushes forward and manages to save Shiori at the very last second before the debris can crush her. Naruko watches this from outside and is surprised that Gero was able to protect Shiori even under such terrible and unfavorable conditions. He recalls that right before Gero sprang into action, he injected himself with some kind of substance that instantly enhanced his body and movements. Naruko concludes that only someone extremely skilled could perform something like that so effectively. Because of that, he believes the only person capable of doing such a thing must be a poison master. At the same time, Gero carefully examines the strange attack that was carried out on the classroom. After thinking it over, he comes to the conclusion that the only type of person capable of causing such an attack would be a sound master. After that, they regroup together in the hallway, and Gero informs Shiori that whatever just happened was clearly an attempt to kill her. Mei hears this and immediately starts wondering whether they should cancel the camping trip for safety reasons. Gero says that decision will likely depend on what Mitsuhiko wants, though deep down Gero assumes he will probably refuse to let the trip happen after such a dangerous attack. However, to his surprise, when Shiori asks about it, Mitsuhiko actually agrees to let her go. He says that she has been looking forward to this camping trip for a long time, so he does not want to take that away from her now. But once they leave, what they do not realize is that Mitsuhiko is being controlled by Naruko's technique. A few moments later, everyone boards the bus and gets ready to leave. While riding on the bus, Gero thinks carefully about the assassin targeting Shiori and realizes that if he truly truly wants to solve this problem, he will need to confront the assassin directly instead of only reacting to attacks. Shortly after, they arrive at the camping location. The moment they get there, Gero immediately starts trying to impress some of the girls by showing off his cooking skills. His food and confidence begin drawing quite a lot of attention from the group. At the same time, Shiori is struggling to meet anyone or join conversations at the event, so she starts thinking of a way to draw some attention to herself. That is when she comes up with the idea of dressing up and performing some cool and funny magic tricks for everyone. Her little performance ends up pleasing the crowd, and the students around her begin enjoying themselves and paying attention to her. At the end of the day, Gero praises Shiori for how well she handled the magic trick performance. Shiori shyly explains that it was just a small skill she learned from being around her father's business world. But just then, one of the students suddenly speaks up and asks everyone if they have ever heard of the curse of Chladni. It is clear that nobody understands the story, so he begins explaining it. He says that this place used to be a village, and the locals made offerings to their nearby deity all the way until World War II. According to the tale, once every 2 years, whenever the crops failed, the villagers would choose the youngest child in the village and lock them inside a nearby shrine as a sacrifice. He continues by saying that after the war, they abandoned those customs. However, for some unknown reason, a series of natural disasters then struck the village. Even though nearly 1,000 people once lived there, it did not take long before every last one of them was wiped out. The group becomes tense listening to the story, but it then turns out that everything was just a scary tale the student made up on the spot, so everyone relaxes and loosens up again. After that, the girls decide to play a game together and begin wondering where Naruko is, since nobody has seen him in quite a while. Meanwhile, Naruko is actually moving quickly and deeply through the forest. He has already finished setting multiple traps meant specifically for Shiori, and from the look on his face alone, it is obvious that he is completely confident he will come out on top. Meanwhile, the group decides to have more fun together by going to a spooky shrine. To make it more exciting, they set up a photo stand along the path so they can take pictures and keep the memory. After arriving, they split into smaller groups, and Gero ends up walking with Shiori. As they move forward, Gero remembers what Mei told him earlier. She explained that you could make a girl think she likes you by putting her in a scary situation, so her fast heartbeat feels like love. Gero understood what she meant, but he felt uneasy about how much she seemed to enjoy the idea. While they walk, Shiori begins to apologize to Gero for coming to the party. She says that if she had just stayed at home, his job would have been much easier, and he would not have needed to come out here and deal with all this. Gero tells her not to worry about it. He explains that a place like this actually reduces the types of attacks they might face, which makes things a bit safer in some ways. Then he asks her to promise him something. He tells her to do her best to enjoy herself. Moments like this do not happen often, and he believes it would be a waste to let fear ruin it, even if someone is trying to kill her. Hearing this makes Shiori feel touched, so she decides to seal the memory by taking out her selfie stick and takes a picture with him. After taking the photo, she looks at it and freezes in shock. Gero's face in the picture looks like a strange spirit. Confused, she quickly looks around and realizes that Gero is no longer beside her. Panic sets in, and she starts running, trying to find him. After a moment, she sees him standing near a log, but when he turns around, his body begins to change into a dark, unnatural spirit. The creature then starts chasing her, but she manages to get away for a while and locks herself in a nearby building. The spirit somehow manages to appear right in front of Shiori again, cutting off her path completely, and it slowly begins walking toward her step by step, making her feel even more terrified than before. Just as it gets close enough, a light suddenly shines over its face, and it is revealed to be her dad. This completely confuses her, because she knows for a fact that her dad is dead and should not be standing here in front of her. Her legs give out from the shock, and she falls to the ground. Her dad then calmly sits down on the floor in front of her, acting as if nothing is wrong, and offers her a drink in a very casual way. Shiori, still confused, asks how she is even able to talk to him right now. In response, her dad explains that she is currently hovering between life and death, existing in a strange state as an offering to Lord Chladni. Hearing this, Shiori quickly takes the chance to ask something that has been on her mind for a long time. She asks him why he chose her to be the successor of the company in the first place. However, before he can give her a proper answer, his his face suddenly splits in two, and another face emerges from within it. This new face speaks in a colder tone and tells her that he deeply regrets ever making her the successor in the first place. Those words hit Shiori hard and break her heart instantly. Before she can even react properly, a red design spreads over her eyes, showing that she is being brainwashed and losing control of her thoughts. The figure continues speaking, telling Shiori that she will always be a failure in his eyes and that she will never live up to his expectations. Then he shifts her attention toward a nearby rope and tells her that it would be better for her to just end her miserable life by using the rope. Under the influence of his manipulation, Shiori gradually starts to believe his words and falls into a dangerously hopeless state. At this point, it becomes clear that the father she saw earlier was not real at all, but actually the same spirit from before that had taken on his appearance to deceive her. Just before she goes through with it, Shiori suddenly remembers a moment from her past when she was able to make people happy. That memory gives her a burst of emotion, and she loudly says that she wants to be able to do that again and make people smile more often. Acting on that feeling, she suddenly runs toward a set of doors nearby and jumps out over a cliff without thinking it through. Almost immediately after jumping, she realizes how dumb that decision was as she begins falling straight down. While she is falling, she starts to think about all the people who have protected her and helped her, and she realizes that if she dies here, she will be letting all of them down. In a desperate attempt to survive, she quickly reaches into her backpack and pulls out her umbrella. For a short moment, it manages to slow her fall slightly, giving her a bit of hope, but not long after. The umbrella breaks apart, leaving her falling again with nothing to stop her. Right before she becomes a pancake, Gero suddenly appears at the last second. He quickly throws down a layer of water-absorbent polymer beneath them and then jumps in to catch her while landing safely on top of it. Shiori looks up at Gero and feels genuinely relieved and happy that he came to save her in time. Meanwhile, Gero quickly realizes exactly what the assassin has been trying to do this entire time. They cannot kill Shiori directly because that would immediately make them a suspect. So instead, they are trying to create a situation where it looks like Shiori either took her own life or died in what seems like an accident. Not long after that realization, Naruko arrives at the scene with a calm smirk on his face. Gero comments on how clever Naruko's trick was, acknowledging that it worked perfectly. He explains that the moment Shiori took that picture at the photo stand, Naruko used a shockwave attack on him that scrambled his sense of direction and separated him from Shiori, making it easier to target her alone. Gero then tells Shiori that they cannot fight Naruko from their current position and that they need to run away as quickly as possible. However, Shiori tells him that she cannot even stand properly right now because her knees have completely given out from everything that just happened. With no other choice, she awkwardly wraps herself around Gero for support, which makes him blush slightly from the sudden closeness. Gero then takes out a dose of his augment serum and injects himself with it to boost his ability, and immediately after that, he starts running into the forest while carrying Shiori with him. Despite all of this, Naruko does not seem bothered in the slightest. Instead, he casually pulls out a massage chair, sits down comfortably, and begins to relax as if he is not in any rush at all. While Gero and Shiori are moving through the forest, Naruko uses his mind whisper ability to interfere with their thoughts and disturb their minds from a distance. Gero quickly realizes what is happening and immediately hands Shiori a pair of earplugs, telling her to use them to block out the sound. However, Shiori tells him that she already has something better. She pulls out a pair of cute noise-canceling headphones. She puts one on herself and gives the other pair to Gero, allowing both of them to block out the outside noise completely. However, Naruko tells them that trying to block out the sound was actually their biggest mistake. He explains that when the sound continues to build up without release, it becomes powerful enough to tear through skin itself. Almost immediately, one of the sound attacks moves toward Gero, but he reacts quickly and manages to dodge it with sharp movement, which briefly surprises Naruko. Even so, Naruko quickly calms himself down because he knows that Gero was never the real target in the first place. At that moment, Shiori's eyes are covered again by the same red design. showing that her mind has been taken over once more. Without warning, she jumps off Gero and begins running deeper into the forest on her own. After running for a while, she suddenly stops as she begins to see a hallucination forming in front of her. The figure takes the shape of her uncle, Mitsuhiko. He looks at her coldly and tells her that he sees her as nothing more than a burden, someone who only causes problems. His words cut deeply into her, and her heart begins to break under the weight of them. In reality, it is Naruko speaking through the hallucination, using her pain against her. Just as the situation gets worse, Gero suddenly appears out of nowhere and kicks the fake Mitsuhiko in the face with force, knocking the illusion apart instantly. Without wasting time, he turns to Shiori and uses a toxin to put her to sleep, knowing that her staying awake in this state will only cause more harm to her. Naruko watches this happen from a distance and is not surprised. He admits to himself that someone like Gero, who is skilled with poison, would be capable of overcoming his hallucination tactics. Gero then speaks out loud toward Naruko, making it clear that he understands how his abilities work. He explains that Naruko's illusions and brainwashing reach deep into a person's mind and pull out their most painful and traumatic memories, turning them into weapons against them. He acknowledges that this makes Shiori an easy target, but he also makes it clear that Naruko is underestimating her. Gero firmly states that Shiori is stronger than he thinks and that she will be able to overcome this. At the same time, Mei is moving through the area while tracking both Gero and Shiori. She eventually comes over a nearby fence and spots them, but she is caught off guard by the position Shiori is wrapped around Gero in. Putting that aside, Gero quickly tells Mei to take Shiori and get her to safety as soon as possible. He understands that given how the situation has gone so far, Naruko must already be thinking of a new way to kill him, especially since his plans have already failed twice. Because of that, Gero decides that he will go and deal with Naruko himself. Meanwhile, Naruko is thinking exactly as Gero expected. He plans to kill Gero first and then go after Shiori afterward, and he even seems excited by the idea. Naruko considers the situation and realizes that Gero's poison needles will not be effective if he cannot get close enough to use them. Because of this, he becomes curious about what Gero plans to do now, especially since he is making sure to keep his distance at all times. Gero suddenly charges forward into the forest, moving quickly as he tries to cut through Naruko's hidden trap wires using his poison liquid. However, when the liquid makes contact, he is shocked to see that it does not work at all and instead simply bounces off the wires without cutting them. Naruko explains that his strings vibrate at an extremely high speed, so there is no way for any liquid to properly touch or affect them. Because of that, Gero's poison liquid cannot cut through them at all. After saying this, Naruko decides that it is time to end everything. He uses his modified bloodline technique and summons a giant spirit golem, which appears immediately and starts attacking Gero without hesitation. Gero reacts quickly and manages to dodge the golem's attacks, avoiding being crushed. However, in the middle of the fight, Naruko suddenly shudders in shock. He realizes that something is wrong because his golem has suddenly stopped moving. Confused, he immediately jumps out of his bath barrel and begins sprinting toward the location. This situation makes no sense to him because he never felt any of his wires being cut or disturbed. When Naruko finally arrives at the scene, he sees what happened. The golem has been completely restrained by thick tree vines and branches that have wrapped tightly around its body. Gero then explains calmly that he used a special type of plant medicine that causes the surrounding vegetation to grow rapidly and uncontrollably. He points out that Naruko's technique has a weakness because the trees and plants are growing so quickly. Naruko cannot play precise notes on his strings, which disrupts his control. Even after hearing this, Naruko does not panic at all. Instead, he calmly explains that fear always exists deep inside people's minds, waiting quietly. He says that he has already seen those hidden fears within others, and all he needs to do is make them grow stronger. Not long after that, the students from the trip notice the giant golem in the distance, and they immediately become terrified by what they see. That sudden wave of fear is exactly what Naruko needs. He uses it to take control of their minds and makes them believe in the curse of Chladni. The leader of the tour suddenly speaks up and declares that they must offer a child as a sacrifice to calm Chladni's anger. Since there is no actual child with them, they decide that the youngest person present will be used instead. The students then begin taking out their IDs and checking their birth dates one by one. It quickly becomes clear that Shiori is the youngest among them. As soon as they realize this, Shiori and Mei immediately start running away from the group. The other students, now under Naruko's control, begin shouting for them to come back, insisting that sacrificing Shiori is the only way to appease Chladni. Meanwhile, deeper in the forest, Naruko calmly cuts some wood and uses his strings to quickly form a violin. Seeing this, Gero immediately prepares himself because he can tell that Naruko is about to use his modified bloodline increment. However, Naruko was just bluffing the entire time as he suddenly hurls the violin straight at Gero and immediately takes off running without hesitation. There is still one final thing Naruko needs to find before he goes back to fight Gero again, and once he manages to find it, he is completely certain that the battle will be decided in his favor. Gero quickly chases after Naruko as he glides across the strings of his violin as though they are pathways under his feet. While moving, Naruko tells Gero that even if Shiori is able to escape and successfully become CEO, her life will only end up becoming even worse than before, because her relatives will reject her completely and other selfish people will constantly try to tear her down and use her for their own gain. He admits that Shiori does have real potential deep inside her, but in order for her to actually reach that potential, she is going to have to work her butt off without stopping. However, Naruko also believes that in the world of the strong, people who are not strong right now simply cannot survive as they are. This belief makes him remember his childhood days back at the dojo where he trained alongside his brother who always worked extremely hard and kept putting in extra effort to improve himself. But Naruko still ended up beating him up easily because of how naturally gifted and talented he was compared to him. Gero then responds back to Naruko, telling him that although Shiori started off as a very weak person, she has already begun to overcome her fears step by step, and he strongly believes that this is the first important step for her to truly become strong in the future. But Naruko is not even paying attention to Gero's speech because at that exact moment he finally finds what he has been looking for all along, which is a hole in the ground filled with phytoncides. These phytoncides are basically healing compounds that trees release into the air, so when they gather together in one concentrated place like this, it becomes the perfect natural healing spot for Naruko to recover in. Naruko's sound master technique is not exactly designed for hand-to-hand combat, so in order to produce sound that will properly hook and trap his enemy, he needs to always be in peak physical condition without any weakness at all. Naruko then jumps into the pit and starts inhaling the phytoncides, taking deep breaths as he tries to fully absorb them into his body. After that, he activates his modified bloodline increment technique, preparing his body for the next stage of the fight. But at that exact moment, he suddenly realizes something is wrong. What he inhaled was not phytoncides at all. It was actually poison gas disguised as healing air. Gero somehow figured out what Naruko needed and set the entire situation up as a trap from the very beginning, carefully manipulating everything around him. Naruko refuses to give up even after realizing this. He quickly compresses his diaphragm and forcefully expels the poison gas from his body by spitting it out with intense pressure. However, it is already too late at that point. Gero suddenly swoops in, grabs Naruko's face using a water-absorbent polymer material in his hand, and then delivers a heavy punch straight into Naruko's stomach. The impact is so strong that it knocks Naruko completely unconscious. As Naruko lies on the ground, he is fully aware in his fading consciousness that he has just been defeated. Even so, he still smirks, because in his mind he knows there is no way to save Shiori anymore. According to his belief, the hysteria cannot be stopped under any circumstances, no matter what anyone does. Meanwhile, the brainwashed tour group is still searching desperately, but cannot find Shiori anywhere. After a long search with no results, they finally admit that they are out of options and completely give up. They decide that instead of stopping, they will now sacrifice whoever is the youngest person they can find after Shiori is gone. Shiori and Mei are then shown hiding deep inside the forest, staying out of sight and trying not to be discovered. Mei thinks it is finally time for them to leave the forest and escape while they still can, but Shiori thinks otherwise and strongly disagrees. She wants to go back instead because she knows that even though she managed to escape, the group will simply target and sacrifice another innocent person in her place. She then looks Mei directly in the eye and tells her that she already has a plan. The scene then shifts to the tour guide zombies, who are preparing to sacrifice another person in Shiori's place as planned, but that is when Shiori suddenly suddenly arrives at the scene, dressed in a witch outfit that immediately catches everyone's attention. She then demonstrates a strange fire-based power in front of them, and boldly tells them she will be able to use it to exorcise Lord Chaldney and end everything. However, this entire act was carefully orchestrated by both Shiori and Mei from the very beginning. The tour guide group even believes her story for a short moment and starts to hesitate, but then one girl suddenly speaks up and loudly says Shiori is lying and only making things up because she does not want to be sacrificed herself. The others quickly turn against Shiori after hearing this and begin calling her a liar. They then demand that she prove it if she is truly capable of what she claims. Shiori is already starting to feel overwhelmed by the pressure and fear building up inside her, but that is when Mei suddenly appears right behind her and signals with her eyes that she should not worry. Shiori then follows through with their plan and uses her flame party tricks to fully capture everyone's attention and make them focus only on her. At the perfect timing, Mei signals Gero to release his poison flame gas directly onto the Chaldney golem at the exact right moment. Gero follows through without hesitation by leaping into the air and unleashing the attack, burning the golem down completely. This sudden destruction causes the hysteria spell to be lifted from all of them, breaking its control over the group instantly. After that, Shiori calmly tells them that Lord Chaldney has now been completely defeated. She then suggests that they should all sit down together and build a campfire. Meanwhile, Naruko is still lying on the ground, slowly realizing that he has been completely defeated by Gero. However, Gero corrects him and tells him that the one who actually defeated him was Shiori, who is already in the process of overcoming her own weakness and growing beyond it. Naruko has always believed that anyone who is weak enough to lose in battle should be killed without hesitation, so he is genuinely shocked when he sees Gero simply turning away and walking off without finishing him off. Before leaving, Gero explains that killing people does not come with his job description, and it is not something he is required to do. He then suggests that Naruko should try opening up to someone about his trauma surrounding weakness, because there is far more to life than being trapped in that kind of mindset and philosophy. Gero then meets up with the girls afterward, and they are visibly relieved and happy to see that he has returned safely without any serious injuries. The next morning, the rest of the students wake up feeling confused and with strong headaches, claiming they all had strange dreams about Lord Chaldney and Shiori being a witch who could control fire. Shiori does not want to deal with explaining any of it, so she simply changes the topic and calmly tells them that breakfast will be ready very soon. If someone takes the time to observe her closely, they will notice that her social skills have improved significantly compared to when she first arrived in this place, as she now speaks more naturally and confidently with others. Shortly after, it is time for everyone to leave, so Mitsuhiko arrives in style, making a dramatic entrance, and Gero and the others are transported away in helicopters. While seated inside, Shiori thanks Gero for everything he has done for her and gently tries to pet him. This catches Gero completely off guard, causing him to jolt backward in surprise. Shiori then explains that this is just a small habit she picked up whenever she praises someone she respects or appreciates. It turns out Gero is actually into that kind of affectionate behavior, so he allows her to continue patting him, and Mei quietly records the entire moment on camera without interrupting. Meanwhile, Fudy is seen completely crashing out after hearing that Naruko failed to finish off Shiori. She has already hired another hitman to take care of Shiori, but Gero arrives at the exact moment and instantly takes the hitman out without any difficulty. Fudy starts panicking, thinking that Shiori has brought a poison master along with her in order to take revenge against her. However, instead of attacking, Shiori calmly bows before Fudy and begs her to train her and teach her everything she knows about the family business and how everything works. Fudy is hesitant at first and does not know how to respond to this unexpected request. But then she remembers Shiori's father's dying wish, which was to look after Shiori and train her properly if she ever shows real potential and determination. The look in Shiori's eyes right now is exactly what he had described back then, so Fudy eventually agrees to train her. Shiori is happy to hear this decision, but by the time she turns around to look back for Gero and Mei, they are already gone without saying goodbye. Gero is then seen carrying Mei on his back while performing unnecessary and flashy Parker movements across the buildings. Mei asks him why he left so suddenly without even getting Shiori's phone number, but Gero responds by saying that based on the time he he spent with Shiori, he can clearly see that she still has a long journey ahead of her and is not yet ready for marriage or anything serious like that. Hearing this makes Mei realize just how responsible and mature Gero actually is when it comes to reading people and situations. They arrive on the ground shortly after and are about to cross the road, but that is when Shiori suddenly rides in on a bike, stopping right in front of them. She says she does not want to say goodbye just yet, so she asks to have one last dinner with both of them before everything ends. They both agree, so later that night, the three of them meet up for drinks in a relaxed setting. At first, Mei thought this would be the perfect chance for Gero to finally make progress and get closer to Shiori romantically, but both of them are so awkward around each other that they cannot even manage to have a proper conversation. Mei quickly realizes how bad this situation is, because if it continues like this, the two of them will slowly drift apart and lose whatever connection they have built. She makes up her mind to intervene, but at that moment Gero suddenly speaks up and tells Shiori that he has a party trick he wants to show her. At first, Mei expects it to be something embarrassing like his previous attempts, but to her surprise, this time the trick is actually impressive and visually beautiful, as he uses his ability to make several beautiful flowers descend gently from the sky. Shiori is genuinely impressed because these are her favorite flowers in the world. Shiori then tells Gero that she also has a party trick she would like to show him in return, and just like that, the two of them begin interacting more naturally and bonding on a deeper level than they ever have before. By the end of the night, Mei has already fallen asleep from exhaustion, while Gero and Shiori are still deeply engaged in conversation. Their time together brings out a lot of Shiori's hidden emotions, and she is just about to confess her feelings to Gero when Mitsuhiko suddenly arrives with a horse-drawn carriage and tells Shiori to get in because it is time for her to go home immediately. They both realize that the moment has been completely interrupted, but before leaving, Shiori quickly asks Gero to add her as a friend. After he does so, she leaves in the carriage feeling both nervous and extremely happy that she was successfully able to get Gero's contact information. Meanwhile, Gero starts to wonder whether Shiori is truly interested in him romantically or if she is simply being friendly. Mei can already tell what is going on, but she simply tells Gero to focus on developing their friendship for now instead of overthinking it. Mei then points out that they need to begin their next operation on Sunday, but Gero says he cannot make it on that day because he will be attending a friend's wedding. Gero explains that the person getting married is actually the bug master, Toshiki. Toshiki is an old friend of his, so it only makes sense for him to attend the wedding and show his support on such an important day. Mei takes one look at Toshiki's picture and immediately decides that she wants absolutely nothing to do with him because of how scary he looks. However, before she can walk away, Gero releases one of Toshiki's butterflies toward her. The butterfly lands near her and formally delivers an invitation to the wedding on Toshiki's behalf, which catches Mei completely off guard and surprises her. Gero then points out that he literally has nothing suitable to wear for such a fancy event, so he is going to need Mei's help picking out clothes and preparing for the wedding properly. After hearing that, Mei agrees to come along. She also reminds Gero that weddings are usually filled with lots of women and social opportunities, so this could actually be a good chance for him to meet some girls and possibly get closer to someone. A few days later, the two of them finally arrive at the wedding venue, and both of them are immediately impressed by just how luxurious and fancy the entire place looks. Before they can spend any more time admiring the scenery and decorations, a strange man suddenly appears out of nowhere and launches several needles directly into Gero's face at incredible speed. The sudden attack causes Gero to collapse straight onto the ground, making the situation look extremely serious. At first, Mei is completely shocked and honestly thinks that Gero might actually be dead after taking that attack directly to the face. However, Gero casually wakes up shortly afterward like nothing happened and introduces the strange needle-throwing man to Mei as Tsunagi, the needle master. Not long after that, Tsunagi's children run over to him excitedly and start asking him to take them to Disneyland someday. Tsunagi calmly agrees to take them there, and seeing this softer and more caring side of him makes both Gero and Mei acknowledge that despite his strange personality and dangerous skills, he is actually a really good father to his kids. Tsunagi then turns his attention toward Mei and immediately assumes that she is Gero's marriage advisor. Hearing that makes Mei suddenly perk up in surprise because she cannot believe he was able to figure that out so quickly. Shortly after that, the wedding ceremony finally begins, and Toshiki arrives in style while carrying his bride, Anna, in his arms. After they land, the priest begins going through all the formal wedding procedures, and while the guests quietly watch everything unfold. As Gero watches the ceremony continue, he still finds it hard to believe that someone like Toshiki is actually getting married. Seeing this moment causes Gero to think back to the very first time he met Toshiki years ago. Back then, the younger Gero had just completed an assassination job, and while he was on his way back, he unexpectedly ran into Toshiki for the first time. At first, Gero assumed that Toshiki had come looking for a fight or confrontation, but Toshiki quickly told him that he had the wrong idea because he was actually just there to sit down and have a drink with him. Toshiki was fully aware that Gero was still underage at the time, so instead of offering him alcohol, he casually offered him apple juice instead. Mei then snaps Gero out of his flashback and tells him to focus because the ceremony is now moving on to the part where they explain how Toshiki first met Anna. Apparently, Anna nearly fell off a cliff while rock climbing one day, but luckily Toshiki happened to be nearby and managed to save her before she could fall to her death. When Gero hears this story, he's not really surprised because he always knew Toshiki to be the kind of person who would end up saving someone in such a dramatic way. The ceremony continues smoothly after that, and while watching everything, Gero quietly asks Mei if he will ever be able to pull off a marriage as perfect and beautiful as this one someday. Mei confidently tells him that he will definitely be able to make something like this happen, especially because he has her supporting him. Not long after that, the wedding ceremony officially comes to an end, and all of the guests begin celebrating happily together. But what they don't know is that a group of bad guys are secretly watching the wedding from far away while preparing to launch an attack. The only person who manages to sense that something is wrong is Gero. The moment he notices the danger, he suddenly gets up from his chair and immediately rushes out while carrying one of Toshiki's spiders with him, completely shocking Mei in the process. Meanwhile, the attackers continue preparing to strike Toshiki and Anna during the celebration, but their leader fails to notice that his own men are quietly being taken down one after another without making any noise. By the time the leader finally realizes that something is wrong, it is already too late because Gero is suddenly standing right behind him with a massive spider web already spread out. However, the leader does not panic at all. Instead, he actually becomes slightly excited and immediately sets off several explosive cannons aimed directly at Gero. The explosion is extremely powerful and destructive, filling the entire area with smoke and debris. Because of how intense the blast is, the leader simply assumes that Gero must have been killed instantly. Seeing the destruction makes him start thinking back to how he even ended up living this kind of life in the first place. Apparently, the guy's name is Yamada, and he used to be a broke, middle-aged man who had nothing left to live for. In his younger years, he lived a very lavish lifestyle, and he ended up buried deep in debt. When the time finally came for him to repay what he owed, he had no money left at all. Because of that, a man known as the Puppet Master took his body as payment instead. Yamada was then subjected to a procedure where he was genetically modified, and multiple bombs were implanted throughout his body, turning him into a living weapon and forcing him to work as a hitman. After the surgery was completed, the Puppet Master personally arrived and informed Yamada that bombs had been placed all over his body. He also explained that Yamada could activate these bombs at any time by simply clicking his back tooth, a technique known as the explosion roulette. This meant that if Yamada ever found himself facing an enemy and was about to be defeated, he could trigger the explosion and take his opponent down with him. Having this kind of fail-safe reignited a sense of purpose and excitement within Yamada. With this new mindset, he ran out into the streets and literally started punching random guys on the street. However, everything changed the day he happened to run into Toshiki. Toshiki completely overpowered him in a fight and beat him so badly that Yamada ended up losing his limbs in the process. At that moment, Yamada thought Toshiki was going to finish him off completely, but instead, Toshiki simply leaned in and gave him a hug. While being held like that, Yamada thought it was the perfect opportunity to activate the explosion roulette and take Toshiki down with him. But just before he could click his back tooth, a small bug flew out of his mouth. Toshiki calmly explained that he had already disarmed the trigger mechanism, making it impossible for Yamada to activate the bombs. After saying that, Toshiki simply turned around and walked away without killing him. From that day on, Yamada developed a deep hatred for Toshiki, because he felt that Toshiki had taken away the one thing that gave his life meaning again, which was the ability to go out in a final explosion. Returning to the present, Yamada begins walking away from the scene, convinced that Gero must have died in the explosion. However, as the smoke from the blast slowly clears, Gero suddenly steps out from within a protective barrier that he had created to shield himself from the attack. Seeing this completely shocks Yamada, as he realizes that Gero survived against one of his best techniques. Their battle continues for quite a while, and during the fight, Yamada actually appears to overpower Gero for a period of time. Seeing this, Yamada tells Gero that he should just go ahead and use his modified bloodline already if he wants to survive. However, Gero calmly replies that he refuses to waste that kind of power on someone like him. Meanwhile, back at the wedding, Mei is currently giving a speech in Gero's place in front of all the guests. Since Gero left so suddenly, he never had the chance to tell her what he originally planned to say, so Mei is forced to improvise by making things up while pretending to read from a fake letter. Surprisingly, the speech ends up being incredibly heartfelt, and it actually reaches Toshiki emotionally. Hearing those words causes him to think back to the time he met Gero again in an alley after all those years. At the same time, the battle outside continues becoming more and more intense. Gero has gradually adapted to Yamada's fighting style by skillfully using the spider webs provided by Toshiki's spiders during combat. Using the webs, Gero manages to wrap Yamada up, spin him around violently, and throw him far away. After doing that, Gero tells him to just stay down and stop fighting because he does not want to kill anyone on a day that is supposed to be about celebrating a wedding. However, as Yamada is falling through the air, the puppet master suddenly begins speaking to him telepathically. He informs Yamada that he has now removed all of his limiters, meaning Yamada can unleash enough explosive power to wipe out Toshiki and destroy the entire wedding ceremony in one massive blast. After hearing that, Yamada immediately shifts his attention away from Gero and starts heading directly toward the wedding venue instead. But right before he launches the attack, he catches sight of Toshiki smiling happily and genuinely enjoying himself at his wedding alongside Anna and all the guests. Seeing that moment suddenly reminds Yamada of the day Toshiki hugged him despite the fact that they were enemies. That memory changes his mind completely. Instead of attacking the wedding, Yamada flies high into the sky and blows himself up far away from everyone else. After the explosion happens, the dark clouds above begin to clear, and a beautiful sunset slowly fills the sky. Meanwhile, back at the wedding, Toshiki thanks Mei for giving such a wonderful speech on Gero's behalf. However, Mei honestly feels that Toshiki is being far too kind toward Gero, especially because Toshiki has always supported him and been there for him throughout the years. Toshiki then reveals that the Gero family is actually one of the 5 families standing at the very top of the master hierarchy. According to him, masters like the Bug Masters and Needle Masters are only members of smaller branch families from the Poison Clan, meaning their status and ranking are actually very low compared to the highest families. Toshiki explains that his father used to tell him stories about how the top-ranking families manipulated lives and committed terrible acts over the years in order to maintain their positions and authority. Because of that, his father always warned him not to become too comfortable around those families or assume they all shared the same values. When Toshiki actually first met Gero, he expected him to act intimidating or arrogant because of his status. Instead, he was genuinely shocked by how calm and composed Gero was the entire time. Unlike many other poison masters who constantly liked showing off their abilities and power, Gero never acted that way and never felt any need to prove himself to others. Toshiki says that this is one of the main reasons why he admires Gero so much as a person. Not long after that, Tsunagi comes over, so both he and Toshiki bow toward Mei and ask her to do her absolute best to help Gero finally find himself a wife someday. Mei laughs after hearing that and promises that she will truly do her best. Meanwhile, Gero finally returns and is shocked to discover that Mei has already bonded with all of his colleagues while he was gone. At the end of the ceremony, everyone gathers together to see Toshiki and Anna off properly as they prepare to leave. Toshiki then spreads out his large butterfly wings and flies away into the sky together with Anna while everyone watches them depart. Meanwhile, somewhere else, an assassin with dual-colored hair has just finished killing another target successfully. His partner praises him for carrying out the mission so efficiently before sending him information about the next next master on the assassination list, and the next target turns out to be Gero. The next day, Mei takes Gero to an arcade and decides to train him on crane games. She explains that being good at crane games is one of the easiest ways to impress a girl during a date because winning prizes effortlessly always looks cool. Unfortunately, Gero is absolutely terrible at it. Even after spending over 10,000 yen, he still fails to win a single prize from the machines. However, things change when Gero notices a whack-a-mole game nearby. The moment he starts playing, he easily smashes every single mole with perfect accuracy. His reflexes are so sharp that he even manages to set a brand new high score. Mei admits that his performance is impressive, but she also points out that his terrifying level of precision might scare girls away instead of impressing them. After spending more time at the arcade, the two of them decide to take some photos together to remember the day. Once they finish, Mei suddenly asks Gero if he has heard about someone called the Hitman Hunter. Apparently, several famous assassins have recently been taken down by a mysterious person known only as the Hitman Hunter. Even some of the most skilled and respected killers in the business have already been defeated. Because of that, Mei warns Gero to stay careful and keep his guard up at all times. Gero understands the warning, and the two of them prepare to leave the arcade. But just as they are about to head out, a mysterious pink-haired girl suddenly approaches Gero and says she wants to talk to him. Before discussing anything else, she asks if they can take a picture together first. After taking the photos, the three of them sit down, and the girl introduces herself as Kimi. She explains that she wants to hire Gero for a job and has been searching for an opportunity to speak with him directly. Mei points out that Kimi could have simply hired Gero through the app instead of coming all the way there in person. However, Kimi smugly replies that they should both feel honored that a beauty like her decided to meet them one-on-one. The moment Mei hears Kimi talking like that, she immediately grabs Gero and starts walking away. However, Kimi quickly begs them to come back and at least listen to her first. Gero and Mei eventually return to the table, and Kimi finally explains the real reason she approached them. She reveals that she's actually a master too, and because of the Hitman Hunter situation, she wants to hire Gero as her personal bodyguard until the killer is caught. The second Mei hears that request, she grabs Gero again and tries to leave for a second time. She argues that a master like Kimi should be capable of protecting herself without needing a bodyguard. Kimi awkwardly admits that combat really isn't her specialty, but Mei still doesn't believe her. Before the situation can get more awkward, Gero steps in and tells Mei they should at least hear Kimi out properly first. Hearing Gero defend her immediately makes Kimi's heart race, and she basically falls in love with him on the spot. Once everyone sits back down, Kimi decides to show them what kind of master she actually is. She suddenly lets out a strange squeak, and a tiny hamster appears beside her. This reveals that Kimi is a hamster master, and the little hamster's name is Sirius. Kimi explains that she wants absolutely nothing to do with a Hitman Hunter situation. Unfortunately, the association of masters she belongs to is completely obsessed with taking the killer down. After hearing that, Gero suggests that the association itself should protect her. However, Kimi sadly explains that there's no way they would bother helping her because she ranks extremely low among the other masters. In fact, most of them wouldn't even care whether she lived or died. She also reveals that she has never killed anyone before, which is one of the main reasons the other masters look down on her and refuse to take her seriously. Even so, Kimi eventually gives up on the idea of hiring Gero because she knows she could never afford his massive daily fee. Accepting her fate, she simply pays the bill and prepares to leave. Despite everything, she's still happy that she at least got the chance to meet her idol before possibly dying. But just before she walks away, Gero suddenly calls out to her and says he's willing to protect her for only 10,000 yen a day. The moment she hears that, Kimi becomes so emotional that she immediately runs over and gives Gero a huge hug. After that, Kimi brings Gero and Mei to meet the other members of the association. However, the moment they arrive at the association headquarters, they discover that everyone inside has already been killed. As they look around in shock, they notice a white-haired man standing quietly in the corner. At first, they assume he must be one of the association members, but Kimi immediately says she has never seen him before. Before any of them can react properly, the man suddenly dashes forward at incredible speed and stabs Gero straight in the stomach before instantly leaping backward. The Hitman Hunter immediately recognizes Gero as the poison master. In fact, he's actually pleased that they met now because it means he can eliminate Gero immediately, instead of wasting time searching for him later. Mei and Kimmy freeze in complete shock, unable to move. Meanwhile, Gero quickly shouts at them to get out of there. Snapping out of their panic, the two girls follow his orders and run away from the building. At the same time, Gero realizes he barely avoided receiving a fatal wound. Even though he manages to stop most of the bleeding, the injury still lowers his overall fighting ability. The hitman hunter then pulls out a small knife and swings it at Gero. Gero narrowly dodges the slash, but the attack is so powerful that it slices an entire building in half behind him. Realizing that dragging the battle out will only get him killed, Gero decides to stop holding back. He injects himself with his strongest toxins, greatly increasing his speed, strength, and tracking abilities. With his enhanced abilities, Gero launches a furious barrage of punches at the hitman hunter and eventually manages to blast him off the rooftop. Gero assumes that attack should have finished him off. However, the hitman hunter suddenly walks out from the smoke completely unharmed. To make things even worse, he casually answers a phone call from his boss while acting like the fight is nothing serious. The battle quickly resumes, and the hitman hunter grabs a massive billboard pillar and starts attacking Gero with it. Gero manages to use his flame toxin to destroy the giant pillar, but the hitman hunter eventually finds an opening and violently slams Gero straight into the ground. This leaves Gero completely shocked because even after boosting himself with powerful enhancement poisons, he still can't keep up with the hitman hunter's movements. After creating some distance between them, Gero assumes the hitman hunter must be a descendant of the Iron Clan because of his unbelievable strength. However, the man casually replies that he's just an ordinary guy from a family of high school teachers. That answer completely stuns Gero. He quickly realizes that the hitman hunter must be a mutant, meaning he has naturally surpassed the bloodlines of all the major families. Realizing he has no other options left, Gero decides to take one final risk and injects himself with a third dose of poison enhancement. Unfortunately, the power is far too much for his body to handle, and he immediately collapses onto the ground. The hitman hunter slowly walks toward him and prepares to finish him off. But before he can attack, Gero desperately begs him not to hurt Mei or Kimmy. Hearing that makes the hitman hunter suddenly pause for a moment. Right then, Kimmy arrives and boldly declares that she refuses to stand by and watch Gero get killed. She tells the hitman hunter that Gero is completely different from the other selfish masters who only care about themselves. She explains that Gero is so kind-hearted that he even agreed to become her bodyguard for an extremely cheap fee. Kimmy then activates her hamster-modified bloodline. However, the ability looks so unbelievably useless that everyone, including the hitman hunter, just stares at it in confusion. The hitman hunter then picks Gero up, causing Mei to panic because she thinks he's about to attack again. Instead, he calmly explains that he plans to take Gero to a doctor. Gero is confused why the man who was just trying to kill him is suddenly trying to save his life. The hitman hunter simply replies that he no longer wants to kill Gero because he has now seen what kind of person he really is. He explains that he only kills bad people. Relieved to hear that, Gero tells him there's no need to carry him to a hospital because he can heal himself. After setting Gero down, the hitman hunter finally introduces himself as Nakagawa. He explains that his real goal was to wipe out every member of the Beast Clan because he heard they were planning something that could kill a huge number of people. Mei immediately questions him about why he also killed members of the other families if that was truly his objective. Nakagawa explains that the Beast Clan was always his main target, but the other branch families simply got in his way. All Nakagawa really wants is to open a small cafe with his girlfriend and live peacefully in a world where dangerous murderers no longer exist. Gero admits that Nakagawa's plan sounds completely insane. Still, after witnessing how terrifyingly strong he is, Gero starts to believe he might actually be capable of pulling it off. Kimmy listens to the conversation and realizes that Nakagawa is planning to spare them. Overjoyed, she squeals in celebration. However, her happiness suddenly ends when she collapses onto the ground without warning. Gero and the others immediately rush over to check on her. That's when they notice her collar has transformed into a living snake. Gero assumes the strange collar must be responsible for what happened. A bat suddenly begins flying around them, and when Gero tries to touch the snake collar, the bat speaks. It explains that Gero was the one who activated the collar, and if if anyone tries to remove it by force, it will suck Kimmy's blood completely dry. The device is called a Bonda constrictor, a special tool designed specifically for draining blood from its host. According to the bat, Kimmy only has about 3 days left to live. Gero angrily asks why they would put something like that on her. The bat calmly explains that Kimmy is simply being used as motivation for both Gero and Nakagawa. It tells them that if they want to save her life, they'll have to come directly onto Beast Clan territory inside the Dogo Animal Kingdom. The group starts heading toward the island on a speedboat, and Gero is truly surprised that Mei has a first-class boating license. Mei calmly explains that it is one of the benefits she gained from tricking many rich men in the past. Ignoring that for now, Gero turns his attention to Kimmy and notices that the snake wrapped around her neck has calmed down a little. Even so, they still have no idea how to remove it, so Gero thinks he might have to use his truth serum on the leader of the Beast Clan to find out how to get it off. As they get closer to the island, Kimmy finally speaks. She thanks Gero for bringing her this far, but then asks him to turn back. She believes the meeting with the Beast Clan is a trap, and she does not want him getting involved in something so dangerous. Gero responds with confidence and reminds her that he promised to protect her no matter what. He makes it clear that he will help her break free from the Beast Clan. Nakagawa also agrees to help, saying he does not mind as long as he gets the chance to fight the Beast Clan. Hearing this, Kimmy becomes overwhelmed with emotion and begins to cry tears of joy. Not long after, they reach the shore. Gero tells Mei to stay behind while they deal with the Beast Clan situation. However, before he can move any further, a giant squid suddenly bursts out of the water and knocks Kimmy away. At the same time, a large eagle dives down, grabs Kimmy, and starts flying off with her. Gero refuses to let her be taken, so he quickly activates his step-up technique, which allows him to run across the surface of the water as he chases after the eagle and Kimmy. Meanwhile, the squid tries to attack Mei by spraying ink at her, but Nakagawa reacts just in time and cuts the squid cleanly in half, stopping the attack. Gero finally tracks down the man controlling the eagle. The guy is standing there cradling Kimmy in his arms as he introduces himself as Koda, a bird master. Meanwhile, back at the other location, Nakagawa is breaking down the squid into minced meat while following along with a cooking tutorial showing the proper way to cut it. Mei watches how fast and clean his movements are and suddenly understands exactly what Gero meant when he said someone around here was skilled in combat. Back with Gero, he keeps the conversation going with Koda and asks him why he's even targeting Kimmy in the first place. Koda admits he doesn't actually know the reason himself. He was simply hired to go after her, and the whole point of grabbing her was to draw Gero out into the open. If Koda manages to take Gero down, he walks away with tens of billions of yen. Koda then starts getting into his personal backstory, but Gero has absolutely zero interest and tells him to get to the point. He asks Koda how to get the snake necklace off Kimmy's neck. That question wipes the casual look right off Koda's face. He turns dead serious and says that even asking about that is considered a crime. He calls in his bird squad, and the whole group charges at Gero at once. Before Gero can properly get his footing, a baseball bat slams into his gut and he staggers from the impact, stunned by how quickly Koda closed the distance. That speed tells him Koda is probably connected to one of the main branch families. Koda runs the numbers in his head and feels confident that as long as he controls the pace of the fight, Gero goes down. He also knows that getting on the bad side of the Poison Clan is the last thing anyone with sense would do, but the payout is too massive to walk away from. Finishing this job means he can finally make it to America, the homeland of baseball, and that dream has been driving him for a long time. Then a slash sends a spray of Gero's blood landing on a nearby crab, and the scene cuts to a man in glasses who pushes his finger into one of his transmission balls and tastes the blood collected inside. He and his subordinate Bayako are watching the whole fight play out through the balls. Bayako wonders out loud if Gero might actually lose this one. The man shakes his head and says Koda has no chance. Poison masters are known for working in ways you don't see coming, so he's certain Gero already has something in motion. Back in the fight, Koda lines up to unleash his modified bloodline technique on Gero. Right before he can release it, Gero hurls a smoke bomb onto the ground between them. The moment Koda spots the smoke, he clamps his hand over his nose, convinced it's poison gas. He braces himself and gets ready to blow it away, and that's the exact moment Gero comes through the smoke and lands a heavy haymaker that drops Koda on the spot. spot. The smoke was nothing but a scented decoy with no poison in it at all. But the assumption cost Kota a critical second, and Gero made him pay for it with one clean finishing blow. Gero walks over to Kota, and before he even has to ask, Kota starts talking. He gives up the Beast Clan's location without any prompting, telling Gero they're stationed at the top of the mountain. He does add that knowing their location doesn't really matter because there's no realistic way to get up there. Kota keeps rambling after that, and Gero stands there wondering if this guy is just so desperate that he's willing to hand over every secret he has. But before the next one comes out, the necklace around Kota's throat suddenly tightens and starts choking him. A voice comes through it, and the man introduces himself as the Beastmaster, Dogo. He turns his attention to Gero and asks whether it's true that he's been taking bodyguard work for next to nothing. Gero confirms it and says his main motivation is to get married. Dogo bursts out laughing because he can already see exactly where this is going. He tells Gero he already knows Kimi is the woman he has his eye on, but then his tone shifts and he reminds Gero that marrying her would be a stain on his family name, given that his ancestors spent generations carefully refining their bloodline. Gero has heard enough and tells Dogo to shut his mouth. A split second later, a spear comes flying at him out of nowhere. Dogo then reveals what he's done. He used the blood of both Kota and a spear master to fuse them together into a single combined fighter. The spear master was a man named Kushima, someone who devoted years of his life to mastering the spear, and those years show clearly as Kota drives thrust after thrust at Gero with terrifying precision. Gero is barely keeping up. He has no frame of reference for how Kota is suddenly able to execute Kushima's techniques, and that uncertainty is making it very hard to figure out his next move. Dogo watches everything unfold through his transmission balls and settles back, fully convinced that it's over for Gero. Dogo calls out for Bayako to come watch Gero get finished off, but she's nowhere to be found. On the other side of the island, Mei and Nakagawa wash up on the shore after getting swept up in the tides and dragged around to the wrong end of the island. They get back on their feet and start moving, but they don't get far before a white bear steps out in front of them. Mei tenses up immediately, expecting it to attack. Instead, the bear starts demonstrating martial arts moves, which genuinely impresses her. She decides not to stick around to find out what comes next and tries to slip away, but the moment she moves, the bear's expression darkens right back to what it was before. Back in the fight, Kota winds up for what he's sure is the finishing blow on Gero. Then he notices something wrong. His birds are weakening, their feathers are drooping, and their movements are falling apart. Kota stares at them in disbelief and wonders if Gero somehow set a poison trap without him noticing. Gero tells him it was nothing that complicated. He laced his own blood with a muscle relaxant, and that was enough to quietly drain the birds of their speed. As a last resort, Kota sends the whole flock charging straight at Gero, but Gero weaves through every single one of them, grabs Kota by the face, and drives it straight into the ground. Dogo watches from a distance and runs his tongue across his lips. He wants Gero's bloodline for himself. Gero doesn't finish Kota off though. He knew from the beginning that Kota was just a baseball-obsessed guy who got tangled up with the wrong people. Kota is relieved to hear that, and tells Gero not to expect the same mercy next time they meet. Dogo doesn't give him the chance to mean it. He crushes Kota's transmission ball and kills him on the spot, saying there won't be a next time. Dogo then shifts his attention back to Gero and makes things very simple. He can do the exact same thing to Kimi whenever he feels like it. The only way to get the snake necklace off her neck is to use Dogo's blood directly, so he tells Gero to come up the mountain and take it if he wants it. Deep in the forest, Mei is pressed into hiding, trying to stay out of sight from the white bear, but it sniffs her out anyway and closes in ready to make a meal of her. Then Nakagawa stirs awake from his nap, sizes the situation up in an instant, and puts the bear down without any fuss. They gather themselves and get moving again shortly after, but before long a leech clamps onto the back of Nakagawa's neck and starts drawing blood, before he can even reach back to pull it off. The same white bear appears from behind and snatches the leech away. Nakagawa stands there confused, not sure what just happened. A little while later it becomes clear. That bear was Bayako in disguise the whole time, and she used the leech to quietly collect a sample of Nakagawa's blood and steal his bloodline. Back at the lair, Dogo has a satisfied look on his face. He now has blood samples from both Gero and Nakagawa. What he's after is cross-sanguination, a process that normally doesn't work across different bloodlines, but Gero is a rare exception exception because of just how extraordinary his resistance to toxins is. With both samples in hand, Dogo is convinced he now has everything he needs to finish them both off for good. Later that night, Gero and Kimi take shelter in a cave. Gero can't settle his mind no matter how hard he tries, because he knows Dogo could simply decide to kill Kimi at any moment regardless of what was said earlier. Lost in those thoughts, he gets caught completely off guard by Kimi's hamsters and stumbles backward, landing with his head on her thighs. Kimi sits there quietly for a moment, and then everything she's been holding in comes out. She starts crying and tells Gero she's sorry for being nothing but dead weight since the moment they met. Gero listens and then tells her plainly not to worry about any of that, because they're in this together, and together they're going to bring Dogo down. With that said, Kimi decides to show Gero what she's truly capable of. So she summons her hamsters and uses one of her modified bloodline techniques to draw a map of the entire island. Gero is really surprised at the sight of this, because knowing the layout of the island is definitely going to come in handy. Having a complete map gives them a huge advantage and makes planning their next moves much easier. Kimi tells Gero that's nothing compared to what else she can do. She then adds that she's going to give him the luxury of trying her famous family dish. It doesn't take long for her to finish preparing the meal with some help from the hamsters. They move around efficiently, helping her gather ingredients and prepare everything she needs. Once the meal is finally done, she proudly presents it and then tries to feed Gero a bite herself. But Gero still feels hesitant about eating food that another person prepared. His father had always taught him that food he didn't prepare himself was poison, so his body is naturally resistant to eating food cooked by other people, even though he knows that isn't necessarily true. The lesson had been drilled into him for so many years that it's difficult to ignore. For a moment, he hesitates and stares at the food in front of him, but in the end, Gero decides to let go of the past and takes a bite of the meal. To his surprise, it turns out to be a lot more delicious than he expected, and probably one of the best meals he's had in a long time. Hearing that immediately makes Kimi light up with happiness. Kimi then starts to explain that this was her favorite meal growing up. She reveals that it was a dish her brother used to make for her even when they were completely broke and barely had enough money to get by. No matter how difficult things became, he'd always find a way to put together a meal for her. Because of that, the dish holds a lot of precious memories for her. Gero thanks Kimi for the meal and tells her once again that it was the best food he had eaten in a long time. Hearing that makes Kimi happy, and the two spend a little more time talking before deciding to get some sleep for the night. Later that night, however, Gero suddenly senses the presence of another master nearby. Realizing someone is approaching, he immediately heads outside to investigate. Once he gets there, he comes face to face with the koala master and his massive army of koalas. The koala master seems completely confident that he will be able to deal with Gero without much trouble. Unfortunately for him, things do not go according to plan. The moment the fight begins, Gero completely overwhelms him. In less than 5 seconds, Gero pieces him up in less than 5 seconds, proving that the gap between them is far greater than the koala master expected. After dealing with the threat, Gero returns to the cave, expecting to find Kimi resting where he left her. Instead, he finds Dogo squatting in the exact spot where Kimi used to be. The sight immediately puts him on edge. Gero demands to know where Kimi is, and Dogo casually replies that he has already killed her. For several seconds, Gero is completely speechless. Before he can react, Dogo starts laughing and tells him to calm down because he has not actually killed her yet, but that does little to improve the situation. Dogo then begins explaining the real reason he came. According to him, he still needs more of Gero's precious blood. The closer Gero gets to death, the more his modified bloodline avoids risky rejection. Because of that, he becomes capable of mixing bloodlines that normally would never be compatible with each other. To Dogo, that makes Gero the perfect tool for creating even stronger bloodlines. After explaining himself, Dogo reveals that he has prepared something special. Masters from all the bloodlines he has created then begin appearing around Gero. In no time at all, Gero finds himself completely surrounded. Seeing the trap spring perfectly into place, Dogo turns around and begins walking away with a smirk on his face. At the same time, Kimi wakes up tied up inside a room and quickly realizes she is not alone. Looking around, she sees several other members of the Beast clan who have apparently been imprisoned by Dogo for a very long time. Some of them look exhausted, while others have almost given up hope of ever escaping. Kimi's arm arms and legs are tightly restrained, making it impossible for her to free herself directly. After thinking for a moment, she comes up with another plan. She brings Sirius out of her mouth and carefully kicks him toward one of the nearby vents. Since she cannot move herself, she hopes Sirius will be able to find a way to help her escape or at least alert someone to her location. Meanwhile, Gero is busy fighting against the hundreds of dummy masters Dogo created. From his hidden lair, Dogo watches the battle unfold with great interest. He can tell that none of the dummy masters are anywhere near Gero's level individually. In a one-on-one fight, Gero would defeat any of them without much effort. However, that is not the point. Dogo knows that even the strongest fighter has limits. If Gero is forced to fight hundreds of opponents one after another, exhaustion will eventually begin to set in. As expected, the numbers start taking their toll. More and more dummy masters continue to swarm him from every direction. Even though Gero keeps defeating them, the pressure continues to build. Watching from afar, Dogo becomes convinced that this is finally the end for Gero. But just when things look their worst, a massive plain of water suddenly forms beneath him. In an instant, Gero is swept away from danger and rescued. Standing before him is none other than Urashino, the water master. Urashino immediately makes one thing clear. She did not come because she likes Gero. The only reason she is there is because May hired her for the job. Urashino assumes Gero must have gotten himself into this situation by accepting another cheap and ridiculous job. When she asks how much he is being paid, Gero casually replies that the job pays 10,000 yen per day, and Urashino finds that rate absolutely ridiculous. At the same time, May and Nakagawa are heading towards the scene. Nakagawa announces that he intends to eliminate the Beast Clan for the sake of the future customers of his cafe. As far as he is concerned, anyone causing this much trouble is bad for business. Putting that aside, he turns to May and asks why she is so determined to save Kimi in the first place. May thinks about it for a moment before answering honestly. She explains that it is not really about saving Kimi. What matters to her is helping Gero become the kind of person who reaches out to others. She believes that if he continues helping people and forming connections, then someday he might finally find the love of his life. Nakagawa hears that and thinks there have to be more efficient ways for Gero to find a wife than risking his life every single time. May agrees with him, but she explains that they already tried things like dating apps, matchmaking events, and all kinds of social gatherings. None of those approaches worked out. That is why May believes Gero risking his life to help people and forming genuine connections along the way might actually be his best shot at finding someone. At the same time, back on the battlefield, Urashino and Gero have been fighting the dummy masters for quite a while. Eventually, they both realize there are simply too many enemies to defeat one after another. Because of that, they decide to come up with a plan that can eliminate all of the dummy masters in a single attack. Gero immediately begins cooking up a large amount of poison gas. The moment the dummy masters notice the spreading gas, they panic and quickly cover their noses, believing that doing so will protect them from being poisoned. Unfortunately, that reaction is exactly what Gero was counting on. Using her control over water, Urashino manipulates the moisture in the air and forces the poison gas directly through their mouths. The dummy masters have no way of defending against the attack. One after another, they become poisoned and collapse. Before long, every single dummy master is dead. With the entire battle finally over, Urashino lets out a sigh of relief and admits she is glad that whole mess is finished. Still, she cannot help pointing out a flaw in Gero's approach. She reminds him that openly discussing a battle plan right in front of the enemy was a terrible idea and warns him to be more careful next time. After saying that, she turns around and starts walking away before she can get very far. Gero calls out to her. Urashino stops and glances back. Gero then thanks her deeply for saving him. The sincerity in his voice catches her slightly off guard, though she tries not to show it. Meanwhile, things are not looking very good for Kimi. The snake necklace wrapped around her neck continues tightening, and she looks like she could die at any moment. As her consciousness begins to fade, memories from her childhood start surfacing. She remembers a time when she was still a little girl. Back then, one of the Beast Clan leaders had cornered her. She was being picked on relentlessly and was probably on lineaments away from being killed. Then, out of nowhere, a young Gero appeared. Without any hesitation, he took down everyone standing around her in a matter of seconds. To Kimi, he looked unbelievably cool. After being saved that day, she swore an oath that she would be Gero's biggest fan for the rest of her life. At the same time, she also knew that Gero Gero was a pretty messed up kid back then. Because of that, she eventually decided to keep her distance. Yet after all these years, Gero still chose to come and save her, not because his clan ordered him to, but because he genuinely wanted to help her. Thinking about that makes Kimmy feel painfully useless in comparison. Even so, she refuses to give up. Summoning every bit of strength she has left, she forces herself back onto her knees. Then she signals her tamed rats. Activating her modified bloodline, she creates an interconnected network, linking together her hamsters and rats. Through that network, Kimmy begins communicating with the other prisoners. Her voice echoes through the hamsters as she addresses everyone being held captive. A wild look appears in her eyes. Looking at the prisoners around her, Kimmy makes a simple suggestion that they smash up the entire place. At the same time, Mei and Nakagawa manage to discover a hidden back entrance that leads directly toward the Beast headquarters. According to the information they gathered, this secret passage is the fastest and safest route to reach the main building without running into too many enemies. Knowing they have no time to waste, the two of them immediately head inside and make their way through the underground path. As they continue forward, they are suddenly stopped by a special security squad known as the 5 Beast Stars. However, despite their reputation, they are no match for Nakagawa as he takes them all down in only a matter of seconds. Eventually, they arrive at the final room, where they run into Dogo. Standing beside him is Bayako, who is still wearing her familiar bear costume. Surprisingly, Dogo does not seem shocked at all by their arrival. Instead, he stays completely calm, as if he had been expecting them the entire time. Without showing even the slightest concern, he simply turns to Bayako and tells her to hold them off while he takes care of something else. Bayako immediately steps forward and activates her modified bloodline ability. She then launches a devastating blow straight at him. The attack is so powerful that it even makes Nakagawa start to sweat. The scene then shifts into a flashback, showing a moment from Bayako's childhood. One day, her mother suddenly becomes seriously ill and collapses without warning. Young Bayako rushes to help her and carefully carries her to bed. From that moment on, she stays by her mother's side, constantly checking on her and doing everything she can to make her feel better. Worried about her condition, Bayako begs her mother to let her take her to a hospital, even though she is clearly in pain and too weak to move. Her mother simply smiles gently at her daughter and tells her not to blame herself. She explains that none of this is Bayako's fault. Then she sadly reveals that hospitals only provide treatment for beast masters who have official partners. Because she is a single mother raising her child alone, she does not meet the requirements and cannot receive medical care there. Even after hearing that, Bayako refuses to give up. She gathers every bit of spare change she can find and runs all the way to the hospital, desperately begging the staff to help her sick mother, and offers them everything she has. Sadly, none of them listen to her plea, and they just shut the door in her face. Things already look completely hopeless for them, but just when it seems like everything is over, Dogo suddenly appears from nowhere and saves Bayako. From that moment on, she devotes her entire life to serving him, doing everything she can to make sure his wishes come true. However, even her strong loyalty is not enough to change what happens next, as Nakagawa quickly ends her life with a single clean strike. Seeing this, Nakagawa feels disgusted. He cannot understand how Dogo can so easily throw away people who are willing to give their lives for him. That feeling only makes Dogo seem even more deserving of death in his eyes. Instead of reacting with sadness, Dogo calmly picks up Bayako's bleeding body as if it means nothing. Even while injured and fading, Bayako weakly apologizes to Dogo for failing to defeat Nakagawa, but Dogo tells her that it does not matter at all. What matters to him is something far more important. His cross-sanguination beast is finally complete. At that moment, a massive creature begins to emerge from inside a huge iceberg nearby. Dogo carries Bayako over and drops her into the beast, completing the final step of his process. He names it the Frankenbeast, a monster created using blood from all the major families, making it extremely powerful and unstable. Once fully formed, the Frankenbeast immediately charges at Nakagawa and slams him away with overwhelming force. The attack sends Nakagawa flying, and he quickly realizes that he is at a serious disadvantage. He understands that if he wants to stand any chance of winning, he is going to need to find a proper weapon to fight this creature head-on. Nakagawa eventually manages to pick up some animal bones lying around, but even that does not give him enough advantage to turn the fight in his favor. He takes a moment to think things through and quickly quickly realizes that the Frankenbeast is far stronger and heavier than he initially expected. On top of that, it is even capable of reshaping its own body at will, changing its structure depending on the situation. This leads Nakagawa to understand that Dogo must have invested an enormous amount of effort into creating this monster. Before Nakagawa can launch another attack, the Frankenbeast already predicts his movement and strikes first, knocking him away instantly. Dogo calmly walks up to Nakagawa and tells him there is no way he can win, explaining that the Frankenbeast is essentially an upgraded version of Nakagawa himself, designed to surpass his abilities in every way. Right after that, the Frankenbeast closes in again, preparing to land another heavy blow. Just before it can finish him off, Nakagawa suddenly receives a phone call from his girlfriend, Marin. She casually tells him that their favorite band has just announced a tour and they should start planning their trip. After the call ends, Dogo looks annoyed and calls Marin an airhead for not understanding the situation or reading the mood at all. Dogo then orders the Frankenbeast to kill Nakagawa immediately. However, before the attack can land, Nakagawa suddenly gets serious and manages to block it. He then explains that Marin actually knows exactly what is happening. She deliberately made that call and said those lighthearted things because she understands that it is the kind of thing that motivates him the most and gets him fired up. With his mindset completely shifted, Nakagawa begins analyzing the fight more carefully, going through every possible way he could defeat the Frankenbeast. After a moment, he realizes something important. Since the beast can predict his movements, the only way to win is to move so fast and so unpredictably that it cannot keep up or foresee his actions. Seeing Nakagawa's sudden change in fighting style, Dogo starts to panic because he realizes Nakagawa might actually be able to surpass the Frankenbeast at this rate. Taking advantage of the opening, Nakagawa cuts off one of the Frankenbeast's arms using his blade, then immediately uses the severed limb as a weapon to continue his assault. Inside the Frankenbeast, Bayako is still connected to its nervous system and is slowly losing control as the damage increases. In a final desperate attempt, she gathers all her remaining strength and launches one last attack. However, Nakagawa reacts even faster. He counters it perfectly and punches straight through the body of the Frankenbeast, creating a massive hole and severely damaging it in a single decisive strike. Now that the battle is finally over, Nakagawa collapses straight onto the ground from pure exhaustion. He lets out a tired sigh and says he just wants to rest for about 5 minutes. However, what he does not realize is that Bayako is still alive. Before she dies, Bayako speaks weakly to Dogo and asks him to drain every last drop of blood from her body. She says it would be an honor for her to become one with him. At the same time, Mei tries to get Nakagawa to retreat and leave the area. As they move, they begin to notice something strange. Blood spray is slowly spreading and surrounding them from all directions. Mei immediately understands that this is their signal to escape. She tries to run toward the exit with Nakagawa, but Dogo suddenly appears right in front of her, blocking their path. Before anything else can happen, a powerful wave of water suddenly bursts through the battlefield. Gero and Urashino arrive just in time to help. Gero equips his assassin glove and apologizes to Mei for getting her involved in all of this, especially since she was only supposed to be acting as his marriage advisor. Dogo then turns toward them and begins explaining that even though the Beast clan is part of the 5 great families, he has always believed they are the strongest among them. In his view, they have no limits when it comes to their modified bloodlines, unlike the others. After saying this, Dogo reveals a special serum he has prepared. It is a bioengineered cross-sanguination mixture made from 93 different species, including the blood of the 6 masters he previously collected. His left arm begins to transform as he activates it, and the full form of the Frankenbeast is manifested once again, far more terrifying than before. The aftermath is immediate. Gero and the others are shown lying unconscious on the ground after the overwhelming attack. Mei is the only one still conscious. She tries desperately to wake Gero up, but he does not respond at all. Dogo then turns his attention to Mei and tells her to stay quiet so he can end her life quickly and painlessly. Meanwhile, in the detainment area, Kimi is doing her best to convince the others to break out and fight back, but most of them have already given up hope. They believe there is no way they can escape at this point. Even if they somehow manage to leave the room, they are still convinced they will not survive Dogo, so resistance feels meaningless. As they lose hope, Kimi's constrictor tightens around her neck. She winces in pain, while the others coldly tell her to accept reality because they are all going to die anyway. Back on the battlefield, Mei suddenly notices something shocking. Gero is back on his feet, and she also realizes he has taken a third dose of his toxin serum. She remembers that a third dose is supposed to be fatal, and from his expression, she assumes he should already be unconscious while standing. Dogo immediately moves in to deliver the final blow. However, Gero manages to dodge and appears behind him instead. Dogo is briefly stunned because Gero was never supposed to survive a third dose. He quickly decides it is not a problem and activates additional abilities from other species, preparing to kill Gero before he can fully awaken. But just as he lunges forward, the sudden shift in Gero's presence leaves Dogo completely frozen in shock. Gero immediately launches a powerful roundhouse kick, slamming Dogo's face straight into the floor. From that single attack, Dogo instantly realizes that Gero successfully completed the triple dose. Even though he's surprised, Dogo doesn't seem worried. He gets back up and tells Gero that the kick was far too weak to cause any serious damage. He then points to the massive pile of corpses behind him, proudly calling them the legacy of the 5 great families. Suddenly, several of Dogo's creations burst out of the ground. Gero's first reaction is to attack them with his poison needles, but Dogo quickly stops him. He explains that it won't work because every one of those creatures carries his blood. The monsters immediately swarm Gero from all directions. Despite being heavily outnumbered, he manages to fight them off and hold his ground. As the battle continues, Urashino watches closely and notices a huge difference in Gero's speed. He's moving much faster than before, proving that the triple dose worked. However, Urashino can also tell that Gero is pushing his body far beyond its limits. While the extra power is helping him keep up with the creatures, his body is reaching its breaking point and looks ready to give out at any moment. Dogo speaks to Gero through one of his creations and finally gives him some credit. He admits that Gero is the most talented person in his bloodline. Dogo explains that it took him years of training and countless experiments to reach his current level of power. Yet Gero somehow managed to achieve enough strength to match him in a very short time. A moment later, Dogo's head appears on one of the creatures. He starts mocking Gero, calling him a hypocrite. According to Dogo, an assassin trying to protect people is nothing more than a joke. However, Gero doesn't even bother listening to the full speech. He immediately cuts the creature in half. Dogo suddenly appears behind him and points out the obvious. The third dose is putting a huge strain on Gero's body, and he won't be able to keep it up for much longer. Dogo believes that talent and skill no longer matter. In a battle between two masters, the winner is decided by who possesses the stronger bloodlust. With that, he reveals his secret weapon. Using a modified version of his bloodline technique, Dogo unleashes the 100 Beast Stampede. The life force of all 93 beasts he had placed inside Hayako manifests at once, creating a massive wave of monsters that charges directly toward Gero. Dogo is completely confident that this attack will end the fight. To his shock, the stampede passes right through Gero. Remaining calm, Gero tells Dogo that he lost his bloodlust a long time ago. These days, all he wants is to experience happiness again. Dogo is left speechless. Only then does he realize what is happening. Gero isn't passing through the attacks. He's actually dodging every single strike at the very last possible moment. Dogo can't understand where he's finding the strength to keep moving. Gero continues speaking and explains that his time with Mei taught him something important. He learned that the only way he can truly find happiness is by helping others. As he says this, a strange blue pattern begins spreading across his hands and part of his face. Sensing danger, Dogo immediately pulls back his attack. The scene then flashes back to Gero's childhood. When he was young, his father taught him about corporal kodoku. He explained that the poisons stored within Gero's body would constantly devour one another over time, becoming more concentrated and refined. Because of that, the strength and effects of the toxins would depend entirely on the type of corporal kodoku he cultivated. Once fully mastered, however, it would become an incurable poison capable of killing anything it touched. Back in the present, Gero finally releases this hidden poison blood technique. At the same time, Dogo sends the 100 Beast Stampede forward once again. When the poisonous blood splashes onto the charging creatures, Dogo remains confident. After all, he believes he is completely immune to every poison Gero can produce. But to his surprise, the poison begins affecting the stampede itself. The creatures become intoxicated by the toxin, completely catching Dogo off guard and shattering his confidence. Dogo is left speechless because he has no idea what kind of poison this is. He cannot even properly neutralize it, and his confidence confidence starts to crack. That's when it finally clicks in his mind. He realizes what is happening because Gero has reached the Mega Ultra SSR level of blood evolution. Dogo immediately jumps back in shock, and, in a desperate move, he destroys his own arms to prevent any further exposure. He comes to the conclusion that the only way he can possibly keep up with Gero is by pushing himself into his final form without holding anything back. With that thought, his body begins to mutate, and he transforms into a massive 10-foot winged mammoth before charging straight toward Gero at full speed. Gero also moves in to attack him head-on, meeting the charge without hesitation, but just before they clash, Gero suddenly changes direction, leaps clean over Dogo, and lands a strike on his back, releasing his poison directly into him. The moment it connects, it is not just physical damage. The poison immediately traps Dogo's subconscious, forcing his mind into a never-ending void where his thoughts begin to collapse on themselves. What just hit Dogo is Gero's incurable poison, meaning his fate is already sealed from that moment onward. Dogo can slowly feel his consciousness fading away, and he understands that death is approaching. However, before he fully goes, he tries one last desperate action. He turns his attention toward Mei and charges at her, intending to kill her before his life ends. But right as he reaches her, his body suddenly locks up mid-motion. He freezes completely, unable to move a single muscle. Then Kimi and the other members of the Beast clan appear on the battlefield and out of the prison. Seeing her, Dogo assumes this must be the work of one of Kimi's hamsters interfering with his body. Back while Kimi and the others were still trapped earlier, even Kimi herself had started to lose hope. However, she eventually gathered everyone and gave a speech powerful enough to shift their mindset completely. She reminds them that all of Dogo's power comes from animals and beast control, and since taming animals and forming bonds with them is what they are best at, they might actually have a way to counter him directly. With that realization, Kimi comes up with a plan to neutralize Dogo's strength by breaking his control over the beasts he relies on. The spirits of the beasts that Dogo had been using in his creations begin to emerge from the mammoth's body. They break free, and the beast tamers of the Beast clan immediately step in, calming and taming each of them. Seeing this unfold leaves Dogo completely speechless, as everything he built is being taken away right in front of him. Gero then steps out from behind him and calmly tells Dogo that this was never a one-on-one fight. From the beginning, it had been him against the entire Beast clan, meaning there was never a real path to victory for Dogo. Hearing this pushes Dogo into rage. He prepares to charge at Gero one last time, refusing to accept defeat. But Gero moves faster, delivering a clean finishing blow that brings everything to an end. With Dogo finally defeated, Gero extracts a portion of his blood and pours it over the constrictor, breaking the seal and freeing Kimi. The moment she is released, everyone begins to celebrate, but none of them notice a small bat slowly descending onto Dogo's chest. That bat is not random, as it has a deep connection to Dogo's past. Long ago, when Dogo was still a child during the Beast Blood Rite, every member of the Beast clan was paired with a beast that would remain their lifelong partner. Dogo had been excited beyond belief, fully expecting something powerful like a lion or a tiger. But to his shock, he was assigned a bat by the head of the Beast clan. In their society, bats were considered the weakest and lowest of beasts. That moment shattered his pride. Dogo lost control of his emotions and convinced himself that the head of the Beast clan was simply intimidated by his potential and deliberately gave him a weak beast. That belief drove him into madness, and in his rage, he wiped out everyone present at the rite, declaring that he would take everything and eventually rule over it all himself. Back in the present, Dogo suddenly wakes up and sees Gero still standing there. He is confused, unable to understand how he is still alive. Gero calmly explains that his corporal Kodoku is an extension of his will. Dogo did not die because Gero never truly wished for him to die. All Gero wants is to help Kimi and the others survive and move forward. Dogo lets out a weak laugh at this and calls Gero a cornball, mocking his ideals. Even at the end, Nakagawa then steps forward and asks Dogo if he has any other hidden tricks left. Before he can answer, Bayako suddenly appears out of nowhere, grabs Dogo, and escapes with him into the forest at incredible speed. Gero and the others immediately give chase and almost manage to catch up, but a massive white fox suddenly emerges and scoops them up, stopping their pursuit completely. A beautiful young woman then walks beside the fox. She introduces herself as the new head of the Beast clan and also as Dogo's sister, Tanako. This was the end. Subscribe to not miss more recaps and watch the next video on screen.
see them dollar signs, girl. Oh, yeah. I heard